ask me everything, so when it's there or not, and I wish you would stay and talk to me. This is my last one.
Short and sweet.
Yeah, short and sweet. So basically, if you know anybody else is wanting to get off of it, or, you know, then throw my name in there.
Okay, yeah.
So, you never know, so. Not that it's not a board or anything, but real nice. I know, right? I was with the city for quite a while.
Walton County.
I could tell you weren't sure it was to begin with. I figured you were gonna get it in a minute.
I did.
I was gonna
Took me-
keep talking till I could see you to you.
It took me an hour or two, but I figured it out. And after I realized who it was, I felt so stupid.
I could tell when you're talking, I kinda caught you off guard there.
Was Teddy got off when he ran and stuff.
Already?
So I knew I'd take that chance, hoping he would pick, keep me on and stuff. I was hoping so.
Tanner, y'all ready? Okay, we'll bring the meeting to order. We're going to start off by saying the Pledge of Allegiance and opening with the invocation. So if you would, please stand. Lord, we'd just like to thank you for this great nation that we live in and the opportunities that it gives us. And we ask that you guide us, direct us, give us wisdom and discernment tonight, and that we make the right decisions for the citizens of Walton County. Trust in me, pray, amen. All right. First thing we need to do is approve the minutes from the last meeting. Everybody have a chance to look over them? They look all right? Do we got our motion?
I make a motion that we approve the minutes from the 10 December meeting.
Second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, all right. Mac?
Evening, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Matt Carpenter for the Planning Department, CARPENTER. We have a fairly robust agenda tonight, Commissioners, including our minutes, 14 items. 3 of these items, we have a request to continue it. Would you like to take those items
Yes,
here in the
please.
beginning? The first request would be item number 2 on our agenda, the Black Creek Future Land Use Map Amendment with Rezoning. We're requesting that to be continued to the March 11th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting at 4 p.m. in this location.
Okay, we have a motion.
So move.
Motion to continue, second? Who's second? Second, Tom? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, go ahead, Mac.
Thank you. The next request is agenda item number 9, the South Walton RV Resort Small Scale Amendment. The applicant's requesting to continue to February 11th, 2021 at 4 p.m. in this location.
Okay, we have a motion.
I make a motion, we continue this item.
A motion, second. Kevin, second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next one.
Thank you. And the companion project to the last item, agenda item number 13, the South Walton RV Resort. We have a request to continue that to February 11, 2021 at 4 p.m. in this location.
Okay, we have a motion.
Make a motion to continue that item 13.
Second? Second by Tom. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, Mac.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a number of legislative items tonight, the first of which, for your consideration, are a series of initiatives that we've been directed to bring forward by the Board of County Commissioners. Wetland density transfer, item number 3, will be the first one for your consideration tonight, and I'll ask our planning manager to describe this particular item.
Okay, thank you.
Evening. I do have a number of letters that we received that we'll need to enter into the record. Letters of objection to this particular amendment.
Okay. Okay.
Our planning email. Okay, commissioners, I did put a summary in your packets of what this would mean. Basically, today, if you're a developer and you have a property that has both wetlands and uplands, you are assigned a density across your entire property. And you're able to, just like in every normal zoning, you're able to take your wetland density and transfer it to the uplands if you don't impact the wetland at all. If you fill the wetland or you impact it, you can only transfer one dwelling unit per 20 acres out. So the current policy has both an incentive to preserve the wetland as well as a disincentive to impact it. The proposed change would eliminate that incentive but keep the disincentive. So if you fill or impact the wetlands, it would still be 1 per 20 that you're assigned to that impacted area. But if you leave the wetlands intact, you don't have the incentive. You're not allowed to transfer the density underlying that wetland area to your upland portion of your site. So this policy's been in the comprehensive plan, as far as I know, since the beginning. And I did do a little analysis. I provided some maps for you of basically where we have vacant lands that have wetlands, according to our basic wetland map, that would be impacted by this policy or that would lose that ability to transfer their wetland density. Does everybody kind of understand the effect of the amendments, or any questions about what it means or anything like that? I'd be happy to answer, without getting into the details. I know a lot of people are here probably to speak about it and what it would mean. There's not, if you look at the analysis, oops, I got the minutes here. There are two amendments, one to the comprehensive plan and one to the land development code. This is in our comprehensive plan. So it would have to be transmitted to the state, and that what you would be acting on tonight, two amendments. One is the vote to transmit to the state for review the comp plan amendment, and the second is the land development code amendment that is also necessary because this is in both places. I can tell you that in Walton County, the projects that I've seen come forward, we have very little wetland impact comparatively, just from my experience over the years, because of this policy. So what the result will be, we don't know moving forward. If the developers are going to decide to forego wetland impacts, or if there's a greater yield in larger lots by doing the wetland impacts. So we would just definitely need to monitor and see how that went. There is also the potential for this to be litigious, and I'll just leave that there.
I've got a question then. If this thing passes, it puts several properties into non-compliance. that have already, because anything that doesn't fall into this then becomes non-compliant, am I right?
Well, if you have a project in the hopper, is that what you're speaking on? If you have
Talking about anything that's already been done, if we change this, does it make anything that's already been developed, and does it put it into a non-compliant situation?
No, I mean, I think they would be, you know, grandfathered projects. I don't think that they would be, you know, they would be non-conforming to the new
Non-conforming.
regulations.
They'd be non-conforming at that point.
Yeah, so any redevelopment or anything, yes.
Well, if they're non-conforming and you have and this could be anybody, I mean, you could have somebody that owns a house that's in a subdivision that did transfer densities out, clustering, so to speak, and so they've had the advantage of that, but they don't know it. If their house gets, destroyed by fire by 50% or hurricane by 50%, are they not allowed to build it back then?
That's a very good question. So,
because you got a lot of people out there that don't know how this could affect them.
and I would say most of our, a lot of our subdivisions, at least since I've been here in the 5 years, have benefited from this policy, the new one. So, you know, it's been a program that's widely used. We don't, like I said, we don't get a lot of wetland impact. We see a lot of the transfer out. You know, that does result in a product on the upland that is denser, you know, but that's kind of the trade-off, is you're preserving the wetland area, and the developer's still getting the yield that he had assigned over the category. So that's one issue. I mean, the other issue is, I think that it only applies to residential development, and it only applies to South Walton as it's currently written. So that's important to understand, that we're treating a certain type of development differently, and that usually is hard to defend. So if, you move forward, you kind of have to think that, that would be a place of challenge, I think, is that, well, why isn't residential development or non-residential development also in the same situation, or isn't the north part of the county also have, if the intent is, whatever problem you're trying to mitigate, is that equally applied? That will be looked at.
So why is this being proposed?
Well, this was brought to us by the board on the 24th, and I'm pretty sure it was a citizen initiative, and I don't know if anybody's here tonight.
Board
Opponent.
being
That
the
would be a good
Board of
question for
County
them.
Commissioners.
Yes, they did.
The wetlands, they go in conservation.
Yes, yes, I mean, it's very important to preserve wetlands, yes. Any subdivision is able to use this policy, not just the one zoned conservation residential. Any residential development that has wetlands currently can use this density transfer. It's almost kind of a misnomer to talk about density transfer, because that is the density that they have assigned. We're just letting them move it around. So it's not like we're giving them more, we're just letting them move it around under the current policy. So this would take what they currently have in the wetland area. It would reduce the allowable density effectively.
So this is trying to minimize density.
Yes, I do believe that is the main idea. So, you would basically take that from those properties that have that density currently.
How many properties are out there left in South Walton that don't already have development or zone them, that are left to be developed? We don't have that much left down there, do we?
We don't. And then if you look at the map that's in your packet, there's a little bit of an analysis that shows the number of parcels. And my copy's cut off, so I hope yours isn't. Scott, there's, so calculated 5,000, there it is. 5,234 acres as developed. So these are like vacant, not what's really left, if you look at your map, is that area north of 98.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that this area is kind of the last to go because it has a lot of wetland area, it has a lot of flood issues. So, I would just posit that wetland protection is crucial. Wetlands not only clean the water, but they also store floodwaters.
Do you have any idea why they selected only part of Walton County to do this?
I think that the impetus for limiting density really is South Walton. That's where the main concern is for the additional density from the citizens. Not twice the density. He would be allowed to take his current density, let's say it's 4 units per acre, and he's got 10 acres. He's got 40 units that he can build on that 10 acres, that 4 units per acre, correct? So if 5 of those were wetlands, we would still let him have his 40, but he would have to put them on the upland portion of the site. He could not impact the wetlands to get that full 40 currently. In some cases, in neighborhood infill, in some of our zoning districts, there is a provision that you meet the density of your surrounding neighbors. That's not always the case, but if you're zone neighborhood infill, that is the case.
You're talking about a compatibility issue there?
Yeah, right. If they fill the wetlands in under the current law, they are penalized. Their transfer density is 1 per 20. So they have an automatic disincentive to do that currently.
But what they could do, under the new rule, is fill that and have bigger lots. Because they're not gonna lose any density, so they could fill the other 5 acres and spread those 20 lots out that they have.
You would get bigger lots,
Yeah.
but potentially lose, and that is a very real possibility
You're gonna
because
lose your
of
density anyway.
the valuation associated with those bigger lots.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
I have heard nothing but negative, I have many emails and negative conversations around this. I'm hoping that the citizens who advocated are here tonight and they can talk to you about it and what the logic is and reasoning. I'm sure, there is good intentions. We just probably need to work through.
So they would have the option of filling with, mitigate with.
Yeah, they would really have no great incentive. They would still have their disincentive of they've already lost all the density associated there anyway because we would be taking that away. So, I mean, what Mr. Perry's saying is they could take the approach of, well, let me fill and clear cut because this is better. I'm going to get big lots and I'm going to get a heavier price. Or that could be too expensive to fill and mitigate. It's really going to depend on the valuation of each property and the pro forma that each developer does, and we're not going to be able to predict that. Questions?
Anybody else got any questions? Okay. I'm sure you're going to have some more questions later, so.
All righty.
I guess we'll open this up to public comments. Oh, we'll come back to the Zoom. I'm going to get the people in the audience first while we're here. I didn't have anybody sign up. I didn't get that thing yet. But let me have, who is here to speak on this? All right, well, Okay, you're dead center. Come on up here.
I'm Gary Shipman, and I'm actually, well, I normally appear in front of this body as a lawyer on behalf of a client. I'm not actually appearing here on behalf of anyone tonight other than I guess as a citizen of this county. I'm against this. I'm against it for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is someone who pays a lot of property taxes. I don't really want my taxes going up because of the millions of dollars this will result in the county's liability undertaking. You know, under Florida law, there's a law called Bert Harris, and I'm sure everybody's heard about the Bert Harris Act. And Bert Harris all comes from a lawsuit that occurred in Duval County in the 50s. And basically, to distill it down into its simplistic form, once you give density, you can't take it away unless you're going to pay for it. It becomes a taking. If you enacted what they're asking for, it would be a taking. And the Bert Harris lawsuits, and what would trigger it as soon as you did this, everyone who owns a parcel with wetlands on it that would have an impact on their density would file a claim with the county, and the county has, I'm not sure, was it 90 days, I think, or 150, and if they deny it, then go to a suit. And it's basically like an eminent domain suit. Believe me, they would flood out of the woodwork if you did this. The second problem you would have is that the way this thing is written, because there's no logical reason for it to be, in other words, I haven't heard some police power reason for it to be limited to south of Walton County, other than as I understand it, the people that are advocating for this, and I'm sure they'll tell you, I understand it comes from the community council, just don't want any more development down here. And the law has a thing called arbitrary and capricious. You can't enact a law that's arbitrary. In other words, there has to be a reason. You can have things that apply differently in different areas. You know, you can say, you know, if you're in a certain distance from like a dune lake, for example, you can limit the amount of density or growth in that area because you're worried about runoff into the dune lake. But there isn't anything about this change that distinguishes it, the north of the bay, from the south of the bay, which would make it arbitrary and capricious and which would result in it being struck. Third concern I have is I listened to this. You know, when Seaside got built in South Walton County, we were sort of one of the, and I'm sure Melissa in my office is going to get up here and correct me about this, but we were one of the birthplaces of a particular type of architecture, and that was to have areas that you had tight density surrounded by areas of no density, which we're very fortunate in this county that we have that. And we have that for several reasons. One of them is the way the LDC and the comprehensive plan are written to encourage people not to build in wetlands, but to rather cluster it on the upland property. Another is we're just fortunate that you may be aware, I did an analysis back 4.5 years ago. There was a push to incorporate South Walton County, and I wrote a paper for the, I guess it was a Small Business Association, but it ended up getting published in the newspaper. And I looked into a variety of things, and one of them, some interesting facts down here, was that 44% of all the land south of the bay in Walton County is State Forest State Park. It keeps you from ever having just a massive asphalting over of the south end of the county. The other is this wetlands issue. So you want new urbanism. You want to encourage people to have dense areas surrounded by nothing, which is what this encourages you to do. So I'm against it. I'm against it because if you enacted it, you'd be enacting something that's arbitrary and capricious and probably wouldn't withstand judicial muster. If you enacted it, I think you would cost this county many millions of dollars in taking. And I'm against it because it runs counter to the whole development scheme of South Walton County, which is to have development be tightly dense or tightly clustered or dense, surrounded by no development.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Daniel Rosenheim, on behalf of law office John W. Robertson, several interested clients. We're against this amendment for several reasons, echoing Gary's comments. We believe that even beside the fact that we don't have any evidence to show that this does have any appreciable or positive impact to our wetlands by decreasing the density, by limiting development on the land, we could essentially balance the interests of the developers, pro-developers, and those who are the citizens who are pushing this amendment by implementing different workshops that would show some form of evidence or basis behind this. Otherwise, I would echo Gary that other than the fact that it would be arbitrary just pointing to the limited development on the south end of the county, there's no evidence that this actually will do anything other than stifle or limit development. If we had economical development practices that took into account flooding and the development and the wetland concerns, I think we can make much more of an impact than completely reducing the developable units on a certain tract of land. So with my remaining time, I can leave it open to John Roberts.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts, you're on the other side today.
I feel like it. You know, one of the things that I really hated when I sat in your seat was when people got up here and they echoed things that have been said, and I find myself sitting in third position about to echo something that somebody said twice.
Cut you off.
Well, please do. It'd be the first time it worked. The interest today is that, and this comes from a place of being a private citizen and also an attorney who works on behalf of some of the interested parties that are affected by this particular proposal. I find myself sitting in a place trying to balance the idea and the idealism of the amendment as proposed and the economic reality of the situation, which is, and I think Gary made this point, but I want to underline it and maybe highlight a little. There will be claims. There will be claims made against the county. They will be takings claims, and those claims will be made on the arbitrary and capricious standard. I believe that to be the case, and I believe that to be fact. I also believe that this, as written, will not survive judicial review. The other part of that, and that's not anything other than letting a judge make a decision as to what happens for the entire citizenry of this county. The other side of that is the county will unnecessarily be tied up in litigation for a period of years over that particular issue on something that I think is completely indefensible. The county will have a position to take on that, and that will come before a judge to have that decision made. But in the interim, what will happen is these particular developers and these particular interested parties will be slow to a crawl at a point where there won't be an opportunity for them to continue to do the things that are invoking people moving here and helping us grow this county economically. The other side of this is, once that's done, the other side is we do have what Michelle has already pointed out several times, which is the standard that works is the standard that we have now. If we remove that benefit analysis, there's nothing left but to take over the wetlands and completely do away with them anyways because they get extra lots that they can use to develop at that point. They really don't have another economic reality beyond that. At this point, this is not an appropriately drafted amendment, and what needs to happen, and I echo what Daniel has already said, is there need to be workshops. There needs to be substantive evidence put forward to show that this would work, because if it doesn't, it's an unnecessary cost. Over the course of educating ourselves and looking at what the citizenry want versus what can happen on an economic and realistic basis, we'll have that information. We'll know, but the studies need to be done, and until that time, this is not ready to be voted on. Thank you.
Thank you. Got anybody else that wants to speak on this? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Melissa Ward, Dunlap Shipman, but I'm actually here just on this particular issue for me. The issue that you have right now is this is not a regulatory ordinance. This is a downzoning of wetland properties. And what you have here is in the 1996 language, you were allowed to cluster. In 1960, APA sent out large amounts of documentation, white papers, scholarly peoples talking about how clustering and avoidance of wetlands is the best method of developing in, rural neighborhoods, small neighborhoods, to preserve the water quality. And now what you're doing is going to, this particular language, which needs to be workshopped. I'm not here to cast aspersions, but this doesn't work. It will not work, and it will cause a lot of problems. Because if an owner of a piece of property is looking at what they can do with that property when they bought it, say 4 years ago, say yesterday, they looked at it as a whole, and they looked at the underlying density as a whole. And today, they're looking at 2 different densities on that piece of property, whatever the uplands are, 4 units to the acre, 8 units to the acre, whatever it is, and then this 1 per 20. They are going to impact those wetlands inherently because they have to in order to make up that difference, where clustering avoids that. It's meant to avoid it. Also, 2018, your wonderful staff came up with language to even remove the buffers out of lots in order to protect more of that pristine area. This is stepping back to pre-1996 when people said just don't do anything with it. The language in the trust documents mention in several places about clustering out of the wetlands. It was always intended to be that way because it was a good idea. This is a bad idea. And I think you should workshop it or something.
All right, thank you. Got anybody else who wants to? Yes, sir. Sure.
Talk a little bit of echoes, and I don't like to hear myself the second time. My name's Randy Gardner, Gardner. I'm speaking today, of course, as many of you know, my past is building the business and development business. But one of the things that I hope will come out eventually is why are we here to start with? I heard the comment, of course, which I'd asked a few folks, as to whether how could something that has such major impact on all of Walton County, not developers, everybody, private citizens, anyone that owns property with any wetlands is impacted by this. So how did we get to the point that we got to discuss something that should have never came up to start with? And I've heard, of course, that it originated from, which it had to, of course, from the county commission. So at some point, I'm going to ask some county commissioners, whose idea was it? It didn't just appear, and it didn't just get passed to the planning department, because, sidelight for a moment, as most of us know, Walton County is one of the 5th or 6th fastest growing counties in America. There's a reason for that. And primary reason, in fact, I moved here in 1983 to handle construction for Peter Bossett's in Destin, stayed there 7 years. And then I left there and went back in the private development business. And in 1993, I observed, and I'm going to say this for balance. I may be a developer, but I've always considered myself a naturalist and environmentally sensitive. 1993, my company and Sandestin and the Howard Group formed the original Scenic 98 corridor to protect development along 98, the corridor that still exists and has been expanded to many others. The reason was I felt it was the right thing to do. I had many developer friends said, are you a socialist and also an idiot? You're going to devalue the property you have that you own on Highway 98. I said, no, I'm not going to devalue it. I'm going to increase the value by a standard that won't look like cookie cutter, but there's some continuity as Walton County develops over the years. And I'm very proud to say, as I drive along 98 over the years, nobody needs to know my name. It's actually irrelevant. But I'm very proud of what the Walton County has developed to be from a national recognition where people want to live here. And they want to live here because it's uniform, but not cookie cutter. And my compliments to the planning department. They got a tough job. Everybody complains about why does it take so long? Well, it takes so long because there's so many things to look at. Setbacks, drainage, environmental issues, a well-planned community, and as I've heard a couple people say, clustering creates also more open space. It's a good thing. And as a matter of fact, and that's almost a loose word when I say fact, but to eliminate the ability to cluster is to invite filling the wetlands. I say that as a developer. You fill the wetland. Now, if they're pristine and there's too much mitigation or too much cost involved, then, and there's no way to measure that. But for the most part, you will fill the wetlands, increase the size of your lots, recover your economic position, and move on. But I won't echo again all of the comments that have been made about the potential legal consequences and costs to the county. We're wasting time. And I feel like somebody, and the commissioners, county commissioners are friends of mine, but someone, so I don't want to be derogatory, but somebody needs to be held accountable for something that now is going to should take workshops, a lot of staff times, a lot of people's time, when nobody can say, what was the logic for this? What's the benefit to it? Nobody can answer that. I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. You got anybody else wants to speak on this? Yes, sir.
Good evening. I'm Scott Jenkins. I'm not an attorney, but I do represent a lot of developers in the area. The only thing I wanted to say is that I think the current policy actually works pretty well. The clustering idea, very rarely, I would say, you can ever max out your density because of all the restrictions and regulations that the county has. You have floodplain issues, you have stormwater requirements, you have open space requirements, you have the wetland issues, things like that really minimize things as it is. So I think your current policy really works pretty well, and I think that if you remove the incentive not to fill the wetlands and get that density to be able to cluster, it will create issues where people are going to fill, even though, and they may do it illegally, they may do it without a permit, they may do it beforehand and wait a couple of years and then come back and get a new environmental assessment, but they'll probably do it, just knowing how people work. And the other thing that I would say is that we don't just work for bigger developers. We work for a lot of people that own 5 acres or 10 acres that have had the property for a long time. And boy, I'm not looking forward to those phone calls when I have to tell people, because oftentimes we're the first ones that may call is an engineer or somebody. And when I have to tell them, oh, well, you used to could do 20 lots, but now it's 10 or something like that, that's going to be a difficult thing because they won't know this is happening. So that's just all I wanted to say, that is that I think the current policy actually works pretty well. So thank you.
So the example was like, you got 10 acres, you can put 2.5 of it is wet. You can put 40 houses, Okay, so if you put that 80 up there, what's the likelihood they're gonna get that total density? Because like you just said, that's what I was wondering about, setbacks and floodplain, what are you gonna, what's the percentage?
Usually it's really hard to max out density. It depends on your land use.
You're not gonna get 80.
So typically it's very hard to do, unless you go to some kind of multifamily development or something. But for a regular subdivision, it would be pretty tough to do. I think really the question is, let's say you have a 10-acre piece of low-density residential that's 4 units per acre, and you could do 40 units. And then could you do 40 units on, 5 acres of property? I mean, it'd be pretty hard to do on 5 acres. You might be able to do that, but you reduce it to 20 as allowable. You're not only, reducing the density, you're just taking it away from people. And that's going to be the hard part to explain, I think, to the people that have had that density since they've owned it in the 50s or something. And then suddenly it's just gone like that. It'll be a tough conversation. So, we'll tell them, but I'm sure they'll call the county next, and it'll be a tough conversation for everybody. So, but thank you.
Anybody else wants to speak? Yes, sir.
Dean Burgess, BURGIS. As a designer and moreover as a citizen of Walton County, I just wanted to speak on this. I'm not going to reiterate the legal concerns, which I also share. I acknowledge and believe that they're legitimate. Workshopping, I think, is something that is important on this. As an engineer, I'm in front of you guys quite often, keep a pretty good ear to the ground, and quite frankly, I just learned that this was on the agenda recently. I think there's a lot of owners in Walton County, particularly South Walton County, that are unaware that this is being heard. Another reason to back up, workshop it, or just completely shelf it. I only see negatives to this ordinance. For the reasons that Scott Jenkins had mentioned, for the reasons that others have mentioned. But one thing I wanted to reiterate is, with the current policy, when density is clustered, typically the wetlands are put in a common area, and more often than not, they're put in a conservation easement. Those wetlands aren't, the lot owners don't own it. It's not on their property. They don't have any right to enter it, especially if it's in a conservation easement. The incentive here, or the disincentive, to protect the wetlands, I don't think any property owner would not decide, well, if I've got 10 units, 5 units, whatever it was, let's just for discussion's sake, say that the property yields 10 acres, whether they impact or don't impact the wetlands. What would you do? You'd have your engineer draw the lots so that it does include wetlands. Maybe you don't mitigate those wetlands, but each lot has a buildable area and the lot owner owns it instead of it being in a conservation easement. Those lot owners over time, going to put a shed on it, going to decide to clear it a little bit, and the wetlands don't get managed properly like Walton County intended with, their conservation and preservation logo. I just think it's a step backward as far as the quality development that South Walton deserves. Appreciate it.
Anybody else? Okay. Yes, sir.
Hello, I'm David Smith with Innerlight Engineering. I'm also a citizen of Walton County. I'm here as David Smith. So I won't repeat everything, but I do think that this is problematic. And when we start a design, one of the things we try to do is preserve as much of the wetlands as possible and preserve the environmentally sensitive areas. So I just see this as, there's no longer an incentive to do it. And if I understand correctly, you actually get more density when you impact the wetland, even though it's 1 unit per 20 acres, as opposed to getting 0 units per acre for not impacting the wetlands. So I see this being problematic. I see wetlands being impacted more. I don't want to do it, and I know no one else wants to do it. So I won't repeat everything else that's said. I do agree with it. I also want to echo what you said, Mr. Perry, about a multifamily project where has already been clustered. If there is a fire like we had last spring and it is destroyed, that's a concern. I mean, it's over 50% destroyed. My understanding is that has to meet the current code, which it would no longer be able to meet. So that is a big concern to me too. So thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Pat Imhoff. I'm a local environmental consultant. Been working in this area for quite some time. In fact, a lot of the folks behind me have been clients of mine, or I have worked with them on their properties. There's a lot that's been said that I won't go into, but I would like to discuss for a second the regulatory protections that are already on wetlands by the state and federal governments. Something that was mentioned that caught my ear was the fact that maybe you increase the size of a lot since you have lower density. If you're impacting wetlands, that is absolutely not going to happen. In order to impact wetlands, there has to be purpose and need, avoidance, minimization, and then mitigation. It is extremely costly, and I think that there is a financial backstop to filling wetlands. It's not something that most people can do because of the incredible expense. Right now, a mitigation credit is $75,000 for a savanna wiregrass credit. That's $75,000 for a credit of wetlands, okay? So that probably relates to somewhere between $50,000 and $60,000 for every acre you want to fill on your property. If you have hardwoods, the price of that credit is somewhere around $115,000. Hardwood wetlands in South Walton are generally higher in value. I am really worried as a business owner. I'm a taxpayer in this county. I'm worried for my business. I'm worried for the property rights of many of my clients and those that aren't my clients. I think this is, this amendment needs a lot of scrutiny and consideration before it's moved forward, because it will be devastating. The wetlands that are to be just preserved on a property, that is nothing short of a firebomb waiting to go off, similar to the fires we've had in recent years. We're not managing our wetlands, our woodlands, not nearly enough, and I think there's a lot of other issues that we can focus on before we start shredding property rights. So I hope we can table this. If not, discuss it further. Thank you.
Thank you. We got anybody else that's here? Yes, sir.
I think this issue's got way more questions than it does answers.
Yes.
And I'm also curious who's driving this truck. And there's nothing that says we've got to rush into this and do this tonight. I'd like to recommend that it get worked on.
Okay. Are you making that in the form of a motion?
Yes.
Okay. I want to make sure we don't have anybody else that's here to speak on this since we had it up. Is there anybody here that was set to speak on this beforehand? 3 on Zoom. We'll get those and then we'll come back to your motion if you don't mind.
Yes.
Okay, let's go ahead and get those on Zoom. Maggie. Maggie, you're up. Hello? Maggie? Okay. All right, well, let's go to somebody else then. Fred Tricker. Mr. Tricker? Hello?
Yeah, okay, got it. Yeah, I think actually my question may have just been answered. I didn't, had a little trouble hearing, but the question really relates to whether anybody would actually be allowed to fill in any of the wetlands if they really would be impacted. They're not going to be able to do that without DEP approval. And my question was, under what circumstances would they approve it? So, you know, I guess that's a question because I think that's important. If it's not easy to fill the wetlands, then maybe there's not as much impact, environmental impact, as we think there is. And the other consideration, of course, is all these wetlands are in, obviously they're in low-lying areas, and there's floodwater, stormwater considerations as well. So the idea of filling in wetlands, I think, would have a serious impact on those things as well. So I just question how practical it is for people to think about filling in wetlands.
Yes, sir.
That's all I've got.
Okay, thank you. We got one more, you said? Ms. Douglas, you there? Ms. Douglas? You're on mute, Ms. Douglas. There you go.
I'm trying to unmute.
There you
How did
go.
I do? Did I unmute?
You unmuted.
Yay! My name's Amy Douglas. I work for Icarus Ecological Services. And I've been in the environmental consulting industry for 15 plus years. And before that, I worked for the Department of Environmental Protection. And one of the things that I have noticed over time, that if you devalue wetlands, people don't value them. So if you take away the interest in having wetlands on your property, then we also get to a point where those wetlands don't have value to people, and therefore restoration, mitigation, preservation, those things don't occur. If you look at the wetlands that are remaining or the lands that are preserved within South Walton, they're related to parks, they're related to mitigation banks, they're related to, wetland impacts that have then been mitigated on-site or clustered off-site. The majority of the wetland preservation that occurs now is due to wetland impacts and finding value within wetlands. I think that the clustering rule, giving the incentive of not impacting those areas, has really had a positive effect on Walton County. So I think that when we leave wetlands on site without a conservation easement, which is probably what's going to occur, then those wetlands are people adjacent are gonna feel like they own them. And when people feel like they own something, they take it over. So we're gonna have wetlands that are fragmented, they're kept, they're not clustered with other wetland areas. We have overgrown then. And then we also have a risk of, catastrophic fire if fire comes through the area because they're not being maintained. And the majority of the wetlands in Northwest Florida are not these beautiful hardwood swamps that people think of. They're usually flatlands, pine savannas, pine flatwoods, things like that are open areas that require maintenance to stay that way. So we don't want to, encourage wetlands to become overgrown. We want to encourage management, mitigation, and preservation of these areas. And by being able to use them within the density to cluster, development into the uplands, that's what that creates. And to speak to any water quality, DEP Water Management District, and now the 404 program has been assumed by the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. So all of the programs associated with wetland preservation are trying to encourage mitigation, preservation, restoration. That's the overall goal. The first step of that is a conservation easement, but we want to go past that. We don't just want to have lands that are set aside. We want to have lands that have the potential of being improved. And when you look at this, development actually encourages, improvement of our conservation land. So I just want to make sure that we look at it from that perspective as well.
Okay, thank you. And that's it on Zoom? Okay, then we'll close public comments and we'll come back to your motion. Mr. Gosen?
I'd like to make a motion that this be workshop and that we ask Mr. Carpenter and or Ms. Hill what would be a reasonable time to go ahead and schedule it to ensure that this doesn't fall through the cracks with the rest of the time passion. So I'm going to ask you what would be reasonable.
Matt Carpenter of the Planning Department. Thank you, sir. I believe probably 30 days to arrange the workshops and then digest that information before we bring back this item to the board 60 days roughly from tonight.
Could we ask for progress report the next time we convene?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we have a motion. What was the date on that? That would be our March meeting? March 11? All right. So we're looking for a time certain of March 11 on the continuance. So we have a second? We have a second. Any other questions? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank y'all. All right.
Okay, the next one's easier.
You hope.
I think everybody probably likes this one. So the next one also was initiated by the board at the same meeting, and this one would basically establish a supermajority vote in our comprehensive plan to change the height limit regulations in South Walton. So if anybody had an idea that they wanted to change those, they would have to get a majority plus one vote to amend that policy in the comprehensive plan. And just to remind everybody, the height limit is in our comprehensive plan, so it's by default hard to change.
Let me ask you a question. This is okay to do, because I know we had some questions about the last one about it being north and south. Does this one, will this affect this too, or can?
Building height, yeah.
Height countywide, right?
Says South Walton.
South Walton is South Walton, but I think, the reason, so South Walton has a unique design aesthetic and a unique pressure for, higher buildings. I think you could make a successful case that that's not arbitrary, that there's a real, I'm not the lawyer, Sydney is, but, we have a very established design aesthetic, as Melissa mentioned, birthplace of new urbanism, all of those things. So I think that, we have an interest
I think they're two different rules, aren't they, anyway?
There's they are two different rules, so North Walton has a different height scenario.
And also, we are basically codifying what has been in existence since 1985 anyway. We're not taking anything away.
I just wanted to make sure so that we.
Right, yeah, and in North Walton, since this goes both ways, rays are lower, we have Eglin issues also, so there's a bit difference there.
Okay. All right, this one's pretty simple then. 3 + 1, I guess, is the supermajority under our current commission's status. Okay. Got any questions for staff? All right, open this up to public comments. If anybody wants to comment on this issue, I didn't have anybody sign up, so nobody wants to talk on this one? Okay, we'll shut the public comments down, and commission, what do you wish?
Move to approve.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you all.
Back to a little bit more complicated. See, the first one, these two amendments are kind of related that we're going to have next. But the first one effectively would change the allowable density for certain parcels that are in the general agriculture and large-scale agriculture land use categories. So the proposal is, if you have a parcel that has at least 100 feet of frontage on a county-maintained road, only a county-maintained road, your effective density would be gross density would be 1 unit per 5 acres instead of the current 1 unit per 20, or 1 unit per 40, or 1 unit per 10. So it gives some additional units, and I did. It's hard for us to calculate this one, but I did have some numbers on the next one. That's what this would do. So this would have to be transmitted to the state, and we would have to go through the review with Eglin and everybody else. I mean, I don't know if that would be totally smooth, but I don't want everybody to know that's in the audience or listening that if this is approved, there's going to be a process to follow for us to get this implemented.
Okay. All right, any questions for staff? None? All right, we need anybody from the public like to comment on this one? Yes, sir.
Good evening. I'm David Herring, North Walton resident. The information that I'm reading, though, for two of the areas that I believe that's going to be a drastic impact for Walton County is if we change our land development code to allow a parcel of, say, 40 acres to be split into have 8 homes on it, we're greatly in our large-scale agriculture affecting our agriculture communities. The reason I say that is because you've got parcels throughout this county that you have cattlemen, you have agriculture members that are row cropping the land through the county. Well, when you start breaking up property into 5-acre sections, then for one, the price of the land for that person that's wanting to purchase property to grow agriculture in Walton County, then what they're going to do is the land value is going to go from $5,000 or from currently $3,000 on a 40-acre parcel to $12,000 to $15,000 an acre because they know they can break this land up into 5-acre sections and sell it. The density level, I mean, the infrastructure, I know we're mostly in large-scale ag. You're in smaller roads. I know it says that you have to have 100 foot. Last time I checked, it's 1,320 feet across a quarter of an acre land, or a quarter of a mile.
That's on the long side, though.
That's on the long side. Well, the problem is when you have on the, like I have 2 different pieces that has 40-acre sections on. So on this area, you've got 2 roads. So now you still got 100 foot on one side, 100 foot on the other. The other problem is by the current rule, you can actually, well, really you couldn't on that one, but on general ag, it'd be the same thing. So when we get down to general ag, for looking at it, when you get into general ag application, well, we're saying we're general ag for 10 acres. Well, current tax code says that you have to have 10 acres to be getting any type of tax exemption. So we're reducing it down to 5 acres. Same thing in our large-scale agriculture. If you're reducing it to 5 acres and we're saying we're large-scale agriculture, how are you getting any tax exemptions for that land use that you're saying that you're doing? You can't. I mean, you can't get any type of exemptions. So what we're doing is we're basically forcing out current farmers that's row cropping the land. For one, the value of the property is going to go through the roof. Everybody talks about we're the third to fourth fastest growing county in the whole United States. Well, the vision of the Land Development Code and the Comprehensive Plan is what are we looking like for Walton County 30 years from now? This is what we're envisioning. Do we want to look like 5 acres, 5 acres of houses everywhere you look in Walton County minimum? Do we want to look at that? Do we want to do with our agriculture? Do we want to do away with this? We've got a lot of kids that's currently in Paxton FFA, Walton High School, Walton Middle School, and Freeport. We're teaching these kids about agriculture. We're telling these kids that you can become a small businessman, and you can promote agriculture, you can grow crops, you can run cattle, but you don't have any land because your parents didn't deed this land over to you. So you're trying to go out and get a loan from Farm Services. Well, Farm Services is going to tell you that the land in the state of Florida in this average area will be $3,000 an acre. Well, when it's $12,000 an acre because of the availability of splitting up this property, now we're greatly affecting these kids, these future kids of trying to come in and come into the agriculture communities. Walton County was formed on agriculture. This is what Walton County was developed to start with. This is the whole thing. That's why South Walton's here, is because the farming operations what kept it alive for all these years. I believe this plan for large-scale agriculture does not need to be even considered for large-scale agriculture. It needs to stay at 40 acres to promote large-scale agriculture. The general agriculture, I believe it needs to stay at 10 acres as well, because if we're calling it general ag, the people that's buying this piece of property can't even get any tax exemptions to even call themselves agriculture. So our land development code doesn't even describe what it actually is. Same thing on these 5 acre or these 10 acre parcels. If you keep it 10, then by law you can do a one-time split by density, the way I understand it. So now we're breaking it down to possibly 2.5 acres on a 5 acre parcel. So because of the density level. The thing I see about this is it needs to be tabled. I don't believe that it's more, and it needs to for sure on the estate residential go to workshops. I've had a lot of people call me. A lot of them are out of town. They can't be here today. A lot of them have farmed, and they're like, we took a small vacation to get ready to start again. A lot of your large farmers in Walton County. They were going to be here, but they couldn't be here because they already got a commitment. But I know they'll be at the board meeting. So we need to table this. The way I look at it, we need to go back and we need to look at the public comment. We need to get it out to public comment to say, what's your vision of it? What is the vision that you have as the citizens of Walton County? Do we want to do away with agriculture in Walton County? Because that's what it's going to do. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Got anybody else wants to speak on this? You got a Zoom? Okay. Are you coming to speak on this? Oh, okay. I didn't know if you were leaving or I don't want anybody staring at you if you're just going to leave, so.
Johnson, for the record, I sure do not want to be repetitious, but I do support what Mr. Herron is saying, but I'm a little bit confused. Why do you really need to change it if you're just going to leave it to the county roads where you have clustering? Correct me if I'm wrong, Melissa, but don't we have clustering? If you have 200 acres and it's 1 to 10, you can take those 20, cluster them to a smaller density that's on the road. And to me, they're asking for a 5 general land use change. If you have 100 acres, you change it to 5 acres,
You have 500 feet, how many 5-acre tracts are you gonna get on it? But you already affected the zoning on the other. Like Mr. Herron said, we don't want a subdivision out in rural trying to protect and promote agriculture, especially since we started building the ag community through the school system, and we like to protect it and preserve it. I think there was a study by Art Miller a few years ago by the state college. One way to grow the economy is the north end through the agriculture. We like to protect and preserve it. I welcome a workshop. I like to just vote it down and leave it like it is.
Thank you, sir. All right, is that everybody? Oh, we got one more?
Joe Braswell, BRSWL. I'd just like to say I oppose this and I adopt what they just said.
All right, thank you, sir. Okay, is that everyone? All right, we'll close public comments. Commissioners?
I do have a question for Ms. Shell. How did, I know if it's like the other one, the Board of County Commissioners sent it here, but what's driving this? Do you know? Have you understand what?
I sort of do. I mean, there's, especially the next one that you're gonna hear, there's people that are not able to build homes in the rural areas that, we don't allow, we don't permit. And, especially on the next one, there's people that are stuck with lots where they can't get a home. So, I think the board's probably been hearing from those folks. I don't know for sure, but that's what I think. And, one unit per 40 acres is very low density, and, there's people that want to be able to put a house on a little less.
Is this something that would be beneficial to the workshops out there talking about? Because I'm like you, there's some issues that I'm not sure about. I'd like to see more about it and hear more about it if that's.
Will the landowner still have an opportunity to, in its current form, go through a land use change to increase the density?
Yes, you can always request a land use change. We've got some criteria in our comprehensive plan that do protect ag and large-scale ag and general ag from land use change. There's some criteria that we have to look at that are about what these gentlemen are speaking about with the ag protection. But this, you wouldn't have to get a land use change. You would just get this. It's like a new density if you have the 100 feet of road frontage.
So it just makes it quicker and easier for them to do it. But then again, like I said, there's some other issues that we probably ought to consider too. So.
Is timberland considered agriculture? I mean,
yes,
like
it is. Silviculture is allowed in both general ag and large scale ag.
A little bit different than you put somebody in a field that's farming and somebody in timberland and put a house.
Yes, they're both in those categories, agriculture and silviculture.
I mean, would that be objectionable? You put a guy.
If you're gonna, can you come up to the front if you're gonna speak? Because we can't hear you in there.
What's the question?
If you wanted to put a house in 5 acres of timberland that's not being farmed, would that be the same thing as, it's not the same thing as putting it in a field that you're farming?
During the 1970s, farming in Walton County suffered a hardship. A lot of that property was put into CRP programs, which is the timberland.
Right.
I forget how many millions of acres in Walton County. There's a number of young farmers. There's roughly 1,500 acres next to my property that's clear cut going into pasture.
Well, that was taken out of farming too.
It's going into pasture. So you take the property from cultivation, you put it into timber. The economy's better in the ag community on the cattle portion of it, and a lot of that's going back into the production. So you can't, to me, you can't separate. Farmland, row crop land, timberland should be treated the same. That's the way I look at it.
Thanks, sir.
I agree with Commissioner Perry. I think there's a lot of questions and a lot of scenarios that have not yet been examined and that there's some stakeholders that are not aware and have not had a chance for their voice to be heard at this time, but,
Yeah, I think we need all the information we can get on it, so.
One other thing I like to add, whenever you do a land use change, that's what you're doing to the county. If I go change my 40 acres, I gotta notify everybody with 300 feet. I think the county should notify every landowner that owns property to let them know what's fixing to happen. 'Cause a lot of times we don't pay attention. And without it happens, before we know it, then it's hard to say or protest it. So I think there needs to be better notification instead of just in the paper.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, go ahead. Is your mic on? No, I don't think it is. Try it now. No, the button needs to be up. rather than down. There it is.
Got it. Okay, so I'd like the farmers to tell me if this is right. Is it fair to say that agriculture is the #1 industry in the north end of the county? It is. So if we did something that would be, if we took away, if you compare the north end to the south end, it almost sounds like, let's take away tourism on the south end. It would be the end of prosperity on the south end. So if we cripple the farmer on the north end, it's kind of the same thing. So is it possible just to vote this down completely and let's start over? And let's include the farmers in the workshop to do what they've been doing for decades, and that's provide food and timber and shelter and continue driving the economy on the north end that they've been doing for years and years? Can we just vote it down and start over and let the farmers be playing a role in how it's worded?
Mr. President, if I may, so the board's options are to, like we did with the previous item, suggest that we continue it and hold workshops, or you can consider it on the merits tonight, but it would not stop here. So if you voted to recommend that the board not adopt this, it would still go forward to the board, and we'd miss that opportunity for workshops. It sounds like you probably want to have the workshops, and the best way to accomplish that before you guys make a recommendation is to do like we did with the last item, continue it, hold those workshops, and then you come back to make your recommendation. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am. Are the farmers okay with that?
Can I suggest on this workshop that we hold it in Defuniak or somewhere north of the bay where it's easier for these guys to get to?
Say like the courthouse maybe?
Defuniak, is that good? Okay. All right, you gonna make another motion for us?
A motion that we workshop this?
We will continue this item, sorry.
Okay, now just so
Continue
that,
to March the 11th, just
March
like the
11th.
other one.
Okay.
Okay.
And to have the workshops be held in Defuniak.
Yes, yeah.
Good. All right, we got a motion and a second?
I second it.
All right, we got a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. Okay.
Really excited about that. I get to work with North Walton a little bit. Okay, so the next item is kind of the same flavor, but this is a little bit different. So I'm gonna, when the comprehensive plan was adopted in November 7th, 1996, that date was established sort of as a grandfathering date. So if you had any property at that time, when that plan was adopted and it didn't meet the density that was put on your property as a result of the plan, you were grandfathered for one unit. And that date stands today. We call it the lot of record date. So this amendment would effectively reset that lot of record date for general ag and large scale ag to January 1st, 2021. So if whatever property you have today, whether it meets the density or it doesn't, it would be grandfathered on this new date for one residential unit. It's kind of like a get out of jail free card. That's the way I like to describe it, because let's say you made a change to your property after 1996 and you messed up and you don't meet the density with that property configuration that you went and recorded or whatever, you may not get a building permit. You won't if you don't meet the density. You have to do legal lot splits after 96. So this would give everybody kind of a pass, and if you have a lot that whatever, let's say you're in the ag density and it's 1 unit per 10 and you got a 2-acre lot, and you split that after 96, you would get 1 unit as long as it was in place on January 1st, 2021. Everybody get that?
Again, what's driving this?
Driving the bus, yeah.
This one, I mean, we do have people that have split lots over the years that didn't know, that are, family. There's even, situations where, somebody bought something from a family member. It was split like a family lot and then they sold it. So there are people out there that genuinely, would benefit, from this, that are in a situation that may not have done something
As in split,
intentionally.
without a development order, they just recorded a deed.
Yeah,
Got
people
it.
do that. They
Yeah,
can,
sure.
you can just go record a deed and it may not be a buildable lot.
Yeah.
Right.
But this
Yeah.
is not gonna affect anything for the future. It's just gonna grandfather in the stuff that's already been done.
Yeah, the stuff that's already been done up to January 1st, 2021, and we did a little analysis of how many lots there are and how many units there are, and I mean, this is a considerable number of, just looking at the property appraisers, and that's not what's recorded. So there's gonna be a difference,
But we're not creating any new ones at this point, is what I'm saying. It's just
Yeah,
what's
I
already
mean,
been done.
you would have to, follow the rules basically from January 1st, 2021, instead of November 1996.
All right. Anybody other questions for staff? Okay, we'll open this one up to public comments. Yes, sir.
Record, when they started the comprehensive plan, a lot of us didn't take it seriously. A lot of times we took property and we broke it up. We got by with it. The planning department was not a policing department. They was more where they take and try to work with you and allow you to build stuff. This is an outstanding remedy to those problems that was created unintentionally. So I welcome that opportunity for y'all to pass this, but a lot for it to be expanded. A lot of time you take and have a surveyor come out and survey a parcel of land, 10 acres. You build a house on it, you get a building permit. For some reason, the guy wants a swimming pool. He gets a different surveyor. That surveyor say there's 9.5 tenths of an acre. To me, since he already had a building permit, the house is built, I think the planning department should issue it without questioning. And I hope that you can incorporate that into this language.
Oh, you mean you're thinking it goes into non-compliance?
Yeah.
Non-conforming, it wouldn't be allowed.
There's been quite a bit of it where the surveyors don't agree.
Yeah.
So the guy came back to me, I found his survey, they took it to planning department, it approved. Just because a surveyor didn't do their job, I don't think that they should be penalized, says you're in the non-conforming.
Sure.
So maybe this is a time to address that also.
I don't know how we, yeah, it is, isn't it? But I don't know how we rewrite this one to cover that.
If the building permit's been issued, that's more or less what this is saying, the partial ID parcel, if it's been identified as a parcel record prior to 21, then if the building permit's been issued prior to 1921, then it's recognized.
Well, I think this would accomplish.
I just want to make for sure.
Okay. It'll be grandfathered in, so non-conformance would not apply to it. Okay. Okay, but you can check into it and make sure that way if we pass it and it goes to commission and there's an issue that they can deal with it there. Thanks, sir. All right, anybody else want to speak on this? Yes, sir.
David Herring again. Basically, I'm in agreement with this as well. I believe where we've had either something going through probate and it's causing a parcel to be, say, if it's on a 7-acre piece of property and it's currently zoned as general ag, then they don't meet the land development code, so therefore they can't build a single-family residence on that residence. So I think it'll be great for the citizens that are in that situation. So that's one of the things, that's what I think about it. So thank y'all for your time.
Thank you, sir. We got anybody else on this? Okay, anybody on Zoom? No? We'll close public comments and, commissioners?
I'll make a motion that we move forward and approve this.
Recommend approval.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, we got a motion. Second. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right.
This is going to be, this is actually staff initiated. So if you're mad, right here. Yeah, so we needed to clean up a little bit what we do with development of regional impact changes. As you know, the development of regional impact program went away in the statutes essentially, but we still have legacy developments that are DRIs, and sometimes they want to make a change. And we wanted to formalize the process that they go through in the code. So if they're making a big change, it's a major. If they're doing a little tiny thing, it's, you know, there's some criteria in the code that tells them what process they have to follow. It's the same as the PUD.
And just, I guess, for the record, we are basically just formalizing, writing down what we already do currently.
Yes, so there's no
change.
arguments.
All right. Anybody got questions for staff on this one? All right. Anybody in the public want to comment on this? No? No Zoom? All right, we'll close public comment. Commissioners?
Move to approve.
Have a motion? And a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. I think the next one was continued. No, Windswept. I'm sorry. Windswept.
You're at,
Number 8.
Number 8.
Windswept Phase 6.
Good evening. This is request to approve by ordinance. Project is being reviewed by me. This is a future land use amendment with rezoning application submitted by Stephen Tatum. This is on behalf of Northwest Florida Properties Trust, requesting to change a future land use of general agriculture and estate residential to rural residential and a zoning district from general ag and estate residential to rural village on 62.33 acres. This project site is located east of Highway 20 on Highway 331, approximately 4 miles to J.W. Hollington Road on the north side of Highway 20, and is identified by the parcel ID number in your packet. I'd be glad to answer any questions for the board, or I can give you a little brief summary of the history, whatever y'all would like.
Y'all got any questions for staff? Yes, sir.
I talked to the mayor of Freeport and asked him how far his infrastructure for sewer went, and he said that they're going toward Ebro on 20. Is that where this is located?
It is located like going toward Ebro, not quite that far. You
Okay.
know, it's further up this way. It's 4.5 miles, I believe, from 331 intersection here.
Yes, ma'am. So this doesn't have supporting infrastructure. It'll be on septic tank?
That's correct, sir.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions for staff? Thank you, Renee. I'm sure you may have another question or two before it's over with.
Afternoon, board members. Stephen Tatum, T-A-T-U-M, from Matthews and Jones, here on behalf of the developer. To answer, or to just to go ahead and address your concern about that we will be on septic tank, that is one reason why we're requesting the zoning change we're requesting, because it requires us to have larger lots. But just some brief background on the project. Renee did a good job covering everything. Currently, right now, on all of Windswept, not just on our property, but all of the Windswept development, it's either zoned Gen Ag or estate residential. General agriculture has a density of 1 dwelling unit per 10 acres, and estate residential is 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres. So we think there must have been some kind of mapping error that just never got caught at some point because the zoning just doesn't match what was already on the ground. So that's part of the reason why we're having to request what we're requesting. So the request is to go to rural residential for our future land use and to rural village for the zoning district. Rural village allows 2 dwelling units per acre. We are 62.33 acres approximately. The project was part of the original 750 acres that was the Windswept project, or I think it was originally known by Magnolia Bluffs was the original name of it, but it's become Windswept. So of those, in that original development order that was approved, there was 450 dwelling units approved. Since that time, there's been 5 plats done in the area, so 5 different phases, and 401 lots have been platted, leaving a total of 49 approved lots that could be built on our 62.33 acres. But because of the way the lots were platted in the first 5 phases, we ended up with a lot of extra room and to end up with a 62.33 acres in this last phase. And I'm using phase lightly because we're not actually going to be a part of the Windswept community. We're not going to use their entrance. We will have no connectivity through the roads. So when I say phase, I think it's just for lack of a better word. We probably don't even have an actual name for it yet because it probably will not be Windswept Phase 6. It'll have some other name when we get to the development order stage. So as I mentioned, the current designations on the property don't match what's already approved to be built on our property or on what's on the rest of Windswept. And we would like to utilize the rest of the property that we have extra now because of the way the first 5 phases were laid out, and put another 31 lots in on the 62.33 acres. So that brings us to a total of 80 lots, which equates to a density of 1.28 dwelling units per acre, which is, well below what would even be allowed in the rural village category. That's very comparable to what's going on in the rest of Windswept. They have roughly about 1 dwelling unit per acre, but you got to keep in mind that takes into account the golf course as well. So there's a lot of golf course property that's being counted into that to get to 1 dwelling unit per acre. Our lots, of course, will have to be at least a half acre because of the septic tank situation. So they'll be half acre or bigger. We, as a part of our application, did have to do a traffic study, which was done. When you run that, there's 2 different versions of the traffic study in your package. One is if we were to totally max out all of our units, which we can't do and won't do. And the other is if we built the 80 lots that we proposed. With 80 lots, that would produce 83 trips and doesn't make anything deficient, any of the roadways deficient. Also, there's an environmental assessment in your package. There was no endangered or threatened species on the site. Obviously a gopher tortoise could be out there somewhere, and if so, we'll talk to Fish and Wildlife and remove it per their guidelines on how you relocate them. Lastly, the Windswept HOA reached out to us to have a meeting because they were concerned because this does back up to their property. And we had a very constructive meeting with them, which I was unable to attend, but we have a few people here who were there. And they had some concerns. One was that we only limit it to 80 lots, which we're more than willing to do, that we don't build more than 2 stories tall for these houses, and there'll be no commercial uses, which we're totally in agreement with. And I think Ms. Ward has something she would propose when we get time for her to speak. But unless you have any more questions for me, that's all of my presentation.
Is there I guess there's an off-site water system, you're not having to put wells in, are you?
No, sir, we have water from Freeport. We have city water. There's actually a city of Freeport well in the middle of our property.
The reason I ask is you said that minimum half acre because of the septic tanks, but I think if you've got an outside water system, you can go to 1/4 acre.
So that may be true.
But you're saying that nothing will be less than half acre?
That's right, that'll be half acre.
All right, thank you.
All right, anything else?
Y'all wrestle it out.
All right.
All right.
Melissa Ward with Dunlap and Shipman. Dunlap and Shipman represents the Windswept Estates Association. So to be very clear what they're asking for, 62.33 acres at Rural Village is 2 units per acre, it's 124 units. If the current developer, owner of the property, sold the property at Rural Village, then they would have a use by right of 124 units. And even if they have septic tanks and so forth, that doesn't mean they can't go higher than 80. So what we did ask them, because they originally proposed 80, that they would cap it. And in addition to that, Rural Village has a non-residential component to it, and it's not that we think they're going to do anything commercial, it's that we don't want them to. So based on any of the criteria that's under that, we asked them, and the developer said they had no intentions of doing any non-residential uses. That, of course, excludes any amenities to the subdivision that are like, you know, pool house or any of that kind of stuff. That's not what we're talking about. We're obviously talking about a Tom Thumb, you know, a shoe store, an attorney's office, whatever. None of that stuff in Windswept next to the golf course, next to these people's homes. And as a measure of an architectural standard, because it is, barring what he was saying about a different developer and everything, because it is and has been a part of the overall master plan, they wanted some conformity, some compatibility, some consistency. So the houses out in Windswept are not any higher than two stories, 1 and 2 story maximum. So they agreed, the developer agreed to no more than 2 stories. And because we had that meeting and it was a very useful meeting having those discussions. We are well aware this is a land use amendment and that it does not tie down the technical issues, you know. So later when they come back for their technical, we'll meet with them again to look at their design plans on stormwater, any kind of issues that have to do with the technical part of it. But this land use amendment, it was critical that we ask them for some of these restrictions. They have offered covenants and restrictions, and the reason that we are here to ensure that you understand our thoughts on this, that covenants and restrictions on a platted subdivision get bought out by big developers and builders, and then they get changed. And that's the bottom line. Everybody knows it. So there's other options potentially, and I'll leave that up to the attorneys to decide. But I have here, then present to you guys, a draft, a very basic draft of a developer agreement that we have given to the attorney for the applicant and to staff, just as I said, 2 stories, no more than 80 units, and no commercial.
They've agreed to it?
Surfacely, yes.
Surfacely, yeah.
There may be technical issues. I'm not an attorney.
We have to have another application and.
So for clarity, because I've done this on another, and this is, of course, is if MAC approves, this is a large-scale amendment. So it will need to go to the Board of County Commissioners to be transmitted, and then go to DCA, and then they get to look at it and make everybody worry, and then it'll come back and it'll get adopted by the BCC. So they get 2 additional hearings first to transmit and then to adopt. Our suggestion was that if this board says, you know what, it's a good idea, we like it, y'all are working together, then they can submit their version of the draft. I'll send them a Word document of the developer agreement to the application process, and in a month's time come back to you, advertise this developer agreement, and take it to the BCC for that adoption hearing should they approve it. And so that we don't want to slow them down. We're not trying to hurt anybody, but there is a way that they could still meet that requirement, because they're not going to get adopted till it comes back from DCA. I mean, not DCA, DEO anyway. Okay. Now, there may be some homeowners in the abutting neighborhood that want to come in and say something, because some of them are here, but that's the majority of our discussion.
You're representing the association over there?
Dunlap and Shipman represents the Windswept States Association.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
If I could just add real quick to what she said. We're not opposed to the developer agreement as it's written at all, besides there's just some minor tweaks. But I would like to handle it and I will have to talk to the other attorney on the other side. Mr. Kaufman's not here tonight. But I would prefer to handle it without having to bring the county into it. And we could do that through what's called a negative easement, which is just basically restrictions on the property that would be in favor of the Windswept HOA. So they would be the only ones who could ever remove it. So that's something I want to work out with him. But I have no problem with this going into the record and it being transmitted, as long as if you recommend approval, it is something along the lines, the motion says, with this developer agreement or the parties working it out in another reasonable fashion. All right, thanks.
Thank you. Did we have anybody in the audience that wanted to speak on this? Yes, sir.
My name is Christopher Walton, the Assistant General Manager at Windswept Dunes Golf Course. I'm here.
Say your last name for her.
Sure, ROBL. Echo a couple sentiments. We have no major issue overall with the development. We welcome the more people in the area. We do have a few things we wanted to bring to the board's attention, though. Specifically, the current plans show a road developed where a cart path exists currently between two holes. We want to ensure that proper safety signage, speed bumps, stop signs are put in place there, both for traffic and for golf cart traffic safety. There's a well that we currently use that is on the proposed lots 46 and 47. This obviously presents a couple problems. Both the well physically being under lots, that kind of goes without.
Whose well is it?
Well, we use the well for water,
Is it Freeport?
I believe.
Is it Freeport?
I'd have to double check, but I believe. Yeah. And then obviously the line going from the well then to the golf course, which as drawn currently is right on the border of those two lots. And we also hold a long-term lease on those two lots. So 46 and 70, we have a 30-year lease with the right to an additional 30 years on those two lots.
They aware of that?
Okay. Our owners have spoken to the developer directly about it, so I'm sure he's aware. I think there was potentially some dispute on the location, but we've checked that, and we do believe it to be on those two lots.
Okay.
There's just a very small number of lots that may cross onto our property in a very small amount. We've also
Well, there's not any lots on this right now, so and this is just a land scale, large-scale amendment, so when they get to the development stage, all this will be brought up again, and you'll get to all the stuff like the golf cart path and all that stuff will be taken up at that time.
Again, we're trying to just mitigate any issues down the road, just a couple concerns that we have that we wanted to bring up so that it's not issues after the fact.
No, it won't be, they'll have to come before this board again with their lot plans and drainage systems and all that, so you'll get another chance to talk to them about that, and they'll probably meet with you on anything that, the well and some other stuff, the golf cart path and all that, so that, it's all cleared up, because nobody likes to get in here and try to figure it out.
And then the last two things, kind of echoing sentiments, was honoring the covenants and restrictions from the first 5 phases. Because the property will butt 2 of the holes on the golf course, ingress egress access for maintenance needs. We want to ensure that those are included, and also what we call the dune buffer zone. So if you've been on a golf course before, there's large sand dunes that line many of the holes, including as proposed here, that would back up to the lots. Currently, it's a 20-foot zone. They do have the right to cut that in half to 10 feet solely if they were to be building a pool on the lot.
You mean these dunes are on their property?
They're on our property.
I don't think they can do anything on your property without your permission.
I mean, as far as we know, they can knock those down 10 feet.
No,
back.
I don't think so. If it's on your property, unless you've gotten some kind of agreement with them beforehand, and they don't look like there's an agreement on that, so I don't think, if it's on your property, they're not gonna mess with it, unless you tell them they can.
All right, well, we'll have to go back and look more specifically at the verbiage there, but.
I think a lot of your issues are gonna come up in the development phase anyway, so you'll get another chance and you'll get a chance to talk to them about it, so y'all may have it worked out before you get here anyway.
All right, thank you for your time.
Sure. We got anybody else who wants to speak on this? Anybody on Zoom? Oh, I'm sorry, come on up.
Name's Nancy Clancy, last name Clancy. I don't know if this is the appropriate place, like we are talking about Windswept. And we have some concerns because our property directly backs up to what they're trying to develop. We were told when we bought the property, as of October 23rd of last year, that no one was going to build behind us. And now we find out, actually my husband works for the post office, and he found out before they even told us that there was going to be more development back there. And our concern is that we just bought the property and we don't plan on ever moving again. We moved here to retire, to, you know, build a life here, and we're concerned that it's going to directly affect the property value and the number of people that are going to be moving in. And if somebody were to build behind there, if they have junk cars because they're not under the HOA, or if, you know.
I'm sure they're going to have their own HOA.
Okay, I just want to, we just have concerns, that's all. And I don't know if this is the right place to address
Who told you that
this.
nobody was going to build behind you?
When we bought the property, the people selling it said that there was nobody going to build behind us.
I don't think they told you the truth. I mean, you know, when somebody else owns property behind you, unless there's, you know, conservation easement or something on it, I mean, they can develop it. So.
It's because it was so close to the golf course, because it's the property right next to where the berm is. It's not on the golf course, but it's all directly angled to the golf course. So we were under the impression that no one was going to build behind us.
I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about. It looks like there's a fair amount of space in there for lots and stuff, so maybe yours is in a unique location that there won't be something right behind it. I don't know, because there's no lots drawn on this. I hadn't, did you see any?
Can I come up and just show you on the plat that?
You can pass it over.
I need it back, though.
Well, okay. If you're gonna make it an exhibit, we have to keep it.
Is there a title to that document?
It's from the paperwork that was sent to us by JP Engineering. It's the plot and the development plan, and I think it's actually on your screen here. We're at 555 Tournament Lane.
That's a topo. I haven't seen any plat, did you? We haven't seen any platted lots, so.
You can pull it
Now
up.
that.
It's actually, no, yes.
Oh, I see, yeah, up in the very corner up there.
Bought. It just had a house built on it.
I got you. Well, they don't have their plans done yet from what this is not.
I just wanted to make sure I voiced my concern, because we are under the HOA, and just trying to understand, like, what's going on.
Well, like I said, they'll come back again. This is just a large-scale amendment. They have to come back again to do the development order, which will show the layout of the lots, and their HOA information will be in there, and all the other information that you're asking about will be done then. So that's,
I just
they'll
want to
let
make sure
you know.
there's a concern for it reducing our property value, potentially.
Like I said, until we see the layout, I don't know what's going to be up there. So, but you'll get they'll notify you because you're within the 300 feet. You'll get a letter telling you what they're going to do, and they'll show you a plat of how they're laying it out. And you'll get to come back and voice your concerns then.
Okay, fair enough, thank you.
Thank you. All right, we got anybody else? Zoom? Okay, we'll close public comments. Commissioners, y'all got any more questions? Mr. Cosin, you look like you got a question.
In a perfect world, development will follow the infrastructure instead of the infrastructure following the development. And I realize we don't live in a perfect world, and it seems like they've pretty much dotted their I's and crossed their T's. I would like to think that once Freeport's sewer system catches up with them down Highway 20, that they would convert to the sewage system for environmental reasons. So I move that we move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion.
If we make that pursue it to their agreement with each other.
What's that?
On this,
Oh, the,
So if you would like to, you can recommend approval with the condition that they either pursue the developer agreement or some sort of other private agreement with the Windswept HOA, as Ms. Ward suggested, which would limit the density to 80 units, right?
You
Just
okay with
throwing that in if you want to add that, Mr. Cosin.
Okay, what you said.
Okay, we've got a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a second. Any more questions from anybody? Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hey, somebody's phone's ringing. Thank you. I just didn't know if you heard it. Everybody else did. All right. Yes, sir. I think the next one was South Walton RV, and it was continued, Mac. So it takes us to Trout Creek Village.
Yes, sir. This small-scale application was reviewed by Bob Baronti, and I'll ask him to describe it for you.
Okay.
Morning, or evening. My name is Bob Baronti. The project is a future land use amendment with a rezoning application submitted by Innerlight Engineering on behalf of Trout Creek Village LLC, requesting a change of current future land use of industrial and extractive uses to rural village, and a zoning district change from heavy industrial to rural village. Or rural residential future land use, I'm sorry, and a rural village zoning change. It's on 7.10 plus or minus acres. The parcel ID is identified in your staff report. Mr. Chair, there are no outstanding comments on the small scale amendment. It meets the comprehensive plan and land development code. Just for your knowledge, there is a companion project that you will hear later. It is the major development order for this project, and if you want to know what is being proposed on that, it is 45 RV pads and 3 cabins.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, will you enter the staff report in the record, please?
Yes, sir.
And if you have no comments for me, I will turn it over to Mr. Smith to
All right.
answer any in-depth questions.
Questions for staff?
Again, I called City of Freeport to see if there was any supporting infrastructure for sewage, and it only went down as far as Hammock Bay and doesn't go all the way down to your area. And for my education, is there any provisions that once infrastructure does finally catch up with the development, that for environmental reasons, that they would be mandated to switch over to sewage instead of septic tank?
I think we can.
Yeah,
Yes.
there's a Florida statute that requires that once those utilities become available, that they are required to make that switch within 1 year. But now there are some technicalities about what constitutes availability for sewer service that sometimes limits that conversion. But generally speaking, yes.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, Mr. Smith is prepared to talk about the transition between
Okay, good.
septic. And if you have no other questions for me, I will turn it over to Mr. Smith to go into.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Hello and good evening. I'm David Smith with Innerlight Engineering, and I'm representing Trout Creek Village LLC. I'm also here with Shannon Howell. He's one of the principals of Trout Creek Village. And as Bob presented, this request is a future land use amendment and rezoning application, and it's to change the future land use from industrial and extractive uses to rural residential and heavy industrial, from the zoning from heavy industrial to rural village. And this property is unique in the fact that it's 10.34 acres. Property is this piece of property here, but only a portion of the property has the industrial land use and zoning, and it's a little over 7 acres. And so this request is only for 7 acres, which is a portion of the property And it's very rare that I see one parcel of land with two separate land uses and two separate zoning designations. So I'm assuming it's a Scrivener's error or something that happened back in the past. So we are here to correct that, as well as I want to point out this is a significant downzoning as far as what's available and able to be done on the eastern portion of this property. And as Bob presented, this request is, which we'll address later on the agenda, is for an RV park. It's 45 pads and 3 cabins. And yes, sir, you're correct. There's no sewer available, so this will be on septic. And the owners are willing, if sewer is available, to connect to the sewer system. So we have had that conversation, and we agree if sewer ever becomes available to the site, we wish to connect also, so and not have the septic system. So
Are you gonna have the pipelines already set up for that? Is that how that's gonna be done?
we already have gravity manholes to convey our sewage to the septic system, so it would be a matter of coming in and installing grinder pumps in those areas to then pump the sewage out to the, it would be
easy to convert then?
I think so. There would be some infrastructure that would have to be done to run the piping, but it's something that we would be willing to do as well to take it off septic also. We would have to do grinder pumps and force mains to connect to the force main if it ever comes in SR 20.
Did they indicate any idea when they might have sewer out there?
I haven't had this conversation as far as when it's coming, and I'm not sure. So we did call though to see if it was available. It's not, and then I haven't heard when it's becoming available.
Their priorities right now, as far as the money allocated to expand their sewer system, is south on 331 and east on 20. That's what they've got money to do right now.
Yeah, other than this, there's not, in Hammock Bay, which they go to there, so there's not
That's
anything
the end of the
much
line.
further out, is it? Yeah.
That's the end of the line.
Okay.
So-
Sorry, Mr. Smith, go ahead.
This is about 10 miles from the 331 intersection, so this is quite a ways west of Hammock Bay.
So
Okay.
could I ask you some questions?
Yes, sir.
Is it full hookup, or is it there a dump station like you find when you go to some state parks? How's your sewer working?
There's services to each pad.
Okay, full hookup.
That's correct.
Water, sewage, electric, and cable?
Full hookup. It will have cable as well, so all the services.
And when you said pads, you mean like everything's going to have concrete pads?
Gravel pads that the RV will sit on.
Okay. Okay. I'm an RV owner. I'm trying to.
Yes, sir.
I'm trying to determine whether or not, what level.
You want to reserve your spot now?
Well, it's kind of hard to get a spot, and I'm glad to see y'all coming and providing some spots, because it's almost impossible to get a RV site. And depending on, there's different levels of RV parks. Some of them turn into, worst case scenario, and I'm not suggesting this is what y'all are doing, but some of them end up being full-time residents, quasi shanty towns. Do you have rules and regulations that would prevent this?
I'm speaking for Mr. Howell now, but you may want to address this too, Shannon.
One of the principles in the intent is for it to be not ultra luxury, but B&A type. So yes, we would definitely have rules to turn it into.
So how long could someone stay? Like, for example, the state parks, to prevent people from homesteading and getting too comfortable, have a 14-day limit. Do y'all have anything like that, or?
We haven't gotten that far yet, but we're in the middle of looking at that right now. We want to keep it on the upper scale. And I know we need to put some of that in place in order to keep it.
Okay, so.
Imagine if you don't, then you're probably not going to have people wanting to come in here and rent short-term either.
Yes, sir. That's exactly right.
But
So if we approve this, which I hope we do, are we also saying that he's pretty much got carte blanche to do whatever he wants to without any type of consideration to quality of RV camp?
you can make a motion, I guess, with an addition to it under.
Right, so just
That
to
would be the
clarify.
next one, I think.
Yeah, and I know it's a little,
Okay.
it's a little confusing because this
Okay.
is just the land use change.
Yeah.
And I will say, Mr. Preston, you can certainly make recommendations and the board can consider those, but we are somewhat constrained by, if any of those considerations aren't currently part of the land development code, we can't necessarily require those, but we can certainly make those recommendations, if that
Thank
makes
you.
sense.
Yes, sir.
More than happy to answer any other questions that you all have.
You got any more? Anybody else? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We'll open up to public comment. Anybody need to comment on this? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is David Meyer. I'm a property owner on Bay Shore Drive that's just adjacent to this. And their property is co-located smack between two subdivisions. I know you like RV parks, and I do too, but this is gonna just destroy our land values. And it's right on top of Trout Creek, like it says. And isn't that a wetland?
I think they have to avoid the wetlands unless they mitigate. Go ahead and finish your question there.
Well,
then he'll answer.
that's one of my questions. It's like, what's gonna happen to that Trout Creek? And, you know, if they're gonna start building docks and have different kayak races or something, if there's not, I know this is kind of getting ahead of it with the actual zoning issue, but it all plays together. So I'll talk later.
Okay.
But I am a little concerned about that, to say the least. I mean, in a bad location.
He'll answer that. Well, I guess the question of that, whether the lots are in the wetlands or not, or what they're doing in the wetlands, come up probably at the next.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay,
So I just want to lodge that right now, that this is, you know, Trout Creek is a nice little creek and people fish there and so forth. And is that going to still be available for us? And what's going to happen to the property values on both sides?
I don't think they can do anything as far as a creek. If it's a navigable waterway, I think.
Well, I understand that there were some construction vehicles there already, and some of the clearing has already started, is my understanding. And it's like, do they have right to do that?
Not to my knowledge, not until they got their development order.
Okay.
They'll answer it for you.
Much of that as you like, or if you would like to wait to the development order.
We'll
but
wait
I can answer all of it.
on the other stuff, but
Right-handed. This is the property, and this is the future development. This is the wetland boundary.
how wide is that?
Wetland boundary? I don't know the width of it. It's substantial. I mean, it's over 4 acres.
No, is it 25 feet wide or what's?
Oh, the buffer is 25 feet. That's a
Yeah.
secondary wetland buffer.
Yeah,
per
that's what I
Walton
was asking
RV.
for, yeah.
But the wetland itself is substantial. So here are the RVs. This is all wetland. This is the creek. The creek is way over to the western portion of the property. So you can see the RVs are over here. This is the creek. We have one common dock for residents to go down and enjoy the creek. And we want to enjoy the creek as well. But there are not multiple docks. There's one dock. We're well away from the creek. And we're not impacting any of the wetlands over here. There's one wetland crossing that's way over here on the east, but it's well away from the creek area. And then the clearing, I know there were lines that were cut by the surveyors, and then there were geotechnical soil borings done.
Oh, okay.
And that's what we did do. And I did want to point out one other thing. So this is, again, is the property. This is an industrial use to our east. And then I just presented how basically this portion of the property we're not using. I mean, it's all wetlands to the west. So there's a substantial buffer to our west. There's industrial to the east. We met with the owner of these properties. They are in support of this over here.
Okay.
So I'd be happy to answer any further questions.
No, we may have some more. We've still got public comments,
Absolutely.
so anybody else want to comment on this from the public? Yes, ma'am. Or yes, sir. Another wrestling match. Another wrestling match.
Dawn Hardage, and I live on 167 Cedar Beach Cove. So our neighborhood is going to be right next to his RV park. And I just want to say up front, you guys have done a terrific job improving the Freeport area. I lived in Niceville in the 80s, and this was not the most desirable area to be, and you guys have done an absolute amazing job of improving 331 and the Freeport area. So this would greatly diminish our home values, invade the wildlife, interfering with sewage and the digging in the wetlands to run electricity, In addition, creating an unsafe traffic situation on Highway 20, as well as potentially increase large vehicle traffic on our street, our one-street neighborhood, and please stop this from happening. Innerlight Engineering is not personally interested in Walton County other than making money, as evidenced in their actions at Blue Mountain Beach in 2019. If we're up to them, Walton County would be the next Panama City. We are asking our community remains to be a desirable and beautiful community, and not backslide as money developers want to bully their way into destroying our peaceful natural area. Our neighborhood is quiet and small, however, the homes are well maintained. We work hard to keep our neighborhood a valued and peaceful place to live. The property at the end of our street is owned by Carolwood Estates. Her land facing Highway 20, she's allowed a construction company to come in, and it is an eyesore at the entrance of our street. It also concerns us that she would give access to this RV park through our street. The wildlife around our neighborhood consists of bald eagles. There's a nest within 50 yards of Trout Creek. We go to see it often with my grandkids. And there are black bear, alligators that live there along in that creek. So this past, I guess before December, their first meeting, somebody actually saw them put a barge in this creek. I don't know if they're trying to widen it, deepen it, so that they have better boat access.
Them.
Somebody from the other neighborhood, from beyond, was it? It was from Choctaw Drive.
But it wasn't the applicant tonight. You're not saying that they did it, right?
Yeah, they had the barge. They were asked on the December 5th why there was a barge there, and he said that he didn't know he was supposed to have a permit to do that. I don't know what the purpose of that barge is. Are they trying to widen it for boat access?
Well, they have to have permits from DEP to do anything like that.
They didn't
so.
do that.
Well, then the DEP will get them.
Okay. Our area requires septic tanks. I don't think there's going to be any sewage in the near future. I mean, it's just, it is what it is. We moved out there to be out in the country, and we understood that. With 40 campsites or 45 campsites, you average 2 people per camper. How big is that septic tank going to be? And with this little land as they have, most of it is wetland, most of it is zoned, I think it's zoned for the wetlands. It drains off into that creek. So they wouldn't be able to put much of a septic tank there to maintain 45 campers and 3 cabins. My other concern is when you put 45 campsites there, I think in Walton County you're allowed to have, it's either, I think it's going to be 17% are allowed to be permanent residents. So in a campground. We were longtime campers as we were building our house, so we had to go from campground to campground around this area while we were building. So you were allowed to have a certain percentage of those campsites be long-term, and that's countywide. So that would be a concern for us too, because these people would be staying there full-term. They can stay there for 5 years or more.
Why would they be able to if you couldn't? I mean, if that's a county regulation. But
because when we would go from campground to campground, we were told you can only stay here for 2 weeks at a time.
Oh, you mean it was a
because the
campground.
long-termers have been taking up all the other spaces that were allotted for long-term use. So I know that there is a percentage of people a percentage of campers that are allowed to stay as long as they'd like.
Okay.
We are campers as well, so I know that, you know, it's nice to have a campsite, but when you slap it in between 2 neighborhoods, it's just, I don't see how you're going to be able to control that. These 40-foot campers pulling a car, they have to unload that car before they put back into their campsite. Where are they going to do that coming off of Highway 20? So
Okay.
that's,
They'll answer a lot of those questions on the next round when they show their plats.
but our
and everything, too.
concern is our property value, access going through our street, our traffic going through our street, making the wrong turn, coming down with your big fifth wheelers or your Class A's that are pulling a boat. And we just want to make our neighborhood safe, our neighborhood quiet, and maintain the quality of our neighborhood.
Thank you, ma'am. You got anybody else who wants to speak on this? Okay, yes, ma'am.
Sarah Haskins, Haskins. My husband and I bought property in Cedar Beach Cove 4 years ago. He was splitting the difference with me because I could be way out in the country and be really happy, but he said, no, we got to be, at our age, a little bit closer to stuff. So we did. But what I wanted to tell you was I used to work at, I got to take this off, drive me crazy. I used to work at C-52 compound, which is off of Range Road 214, which is off of Highway 20, just across from where the old Army camp used to be. Just to the east of that is an area. I think years ago there used to be like a deer station back in there. But after Hurricane Ivan, I started seeing a Jackson Guard truck there all the time. So one day I decided just to stop. Now we're talking just about 50 yards from the old Army camp to the east. So I stopped to talk to him, and I said, what are you guys doing down here? He said, there's an Indian burial ground down there on the bay. We're checking on it, make sure the hurricane didn't tear it up, and I think we're going to move it. Well, this just dawned on me this morning. I said, we're in that area. This property that they want to develop is about a mile from where this Indian burial ground was. I say before anything's done, somebody needs to get the state in there and have a look at it, because there could be all kinds of Native American artifacts.
They have to do all that.
Beg your pardon?
They have to do all that. I think you'll hear more about that in the next.
The developers have to.
Yes, ma'am.
On an archaeological survey.
Yes.
Okay.
So
All
they
right.
do that, and they'll talk more about that on the next round, too.
Okay, but we oppose it also.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else will speak on this? Okay, we got a Zoom. Gail Glasgow. Gail, you there? You're muted. There you go.
Yeah, there we go. Actually, my name is Mark Glasgow. Gail's not available right now, but she asked me to speak, and I thank you for that opportunity. I just want to understand, are we discussing, first of all, I've never done anything like this, so I don't know all the intricacies, of y'all's process, but my understanding is, from what I heard, that you're considering a rezoning request, not a development request?
Yes, well, the development order will come up after this.
Understand. Okay. So this is kind of the first part of that process to ultimately have a proposed RV park with 45 individual parking spots and a couple of small houses.
That's correct. This is a rezoning so that they can do something like that. Right now, it's industrial and extraction, and it's not allowed in that land use.
Okay, thank you for that. A gentleman previously spoke that, who I think represented one of the developers. He was with an engineering outfit, that he had talked to adjacent property owners and they supported that development. I can guarantee you, within our own neighborhood, Cedar Beach Cove, no one has spoken to us, and all this was kind of found out after the fact. I oppose this project. I know that I'll have an opportunity to oppose it again if it moves forward, but that level of density for an RV park next to a residential neighborhood seems a little out of line. The other thing is that the as you're probably aware, Highway 20 is getting increasingly busier, and we have more distracted driving. And I can foresee a time when someone is going to try to pull an RV in or out of this proposed development and, result in a really bad accident. In addition to that, this happens to be probably one of the few places, certainly, that hasn't been touched and developed. So there's abundance of diverse wildlife. A lady spoke earlier and mentioned some of those things. They will be impacted as well as the neighborhood. Someone else spoke with regard to property values. Ultimately, if this is approved and development goes forward, our property values will be adversely impacted. And I think that's, while one of the gentlemen spoke about wanting to have an RV park, sure. There's, I don't have a problem with an RV park. I have a problem with an RV park there. And, there are other places within the county that could accommodate this project and be probably less opposition to it ultimately going forward. Lastly, that's a very high density of living spaces in a relatively small area. In the summer, it gets hot here. People want to go outside. They play their music and it'll be noisy. I mean, that's one of the things that's really beautiful about this place is that not only is it a really beautiful scene and setting, but it's quiet. And that's becoming increasingly more rare. And as far as like a septic proposal for 45 plus living spaces, I just don't see that's going to work out. I mean, I'm not an engineer. I don't know those things, but it just seems like an extraordinary leap to, be able to support potentially 45 plus living areas with a septic. And there is, I understand, plans to ultimately get sewage out into sewage wastewater treatment out into our area. But as was mentioned previously, that is sometime off in the future, and really who knows when that's going to occur. So just in summary, and finally, I realize that we're not talking about development order right now. We're talking about a rezoning application, and if that's got to be where it starts, well then I'm opposed to this change in zoning to permit this particular project. And I sure appreciate you allowing me a chance to talk.
Okay, thank you, sir. We got anybody else on Zoom? Okay, we'll close public comments. Okay.
I have a question.
I do too.
All right.
Go ahead, ladies first.
My question is for the planning department. What can go in here if the zoning isn't changed?
Well, the present zoning is heavy or present future land use categories, heavy industrial and extractive uses, with, I think, heavy industrial, a landfill would be allowed in this industrial district.
Right.
Now, they would have to go through the same development order process as the RV park, but there would be no land use change required.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons that the planning department is supporting the land use change, because it eliminates that portion of industrial zoning in this neighborhood, which we don't feel is appropriate.
Right.
That's much too intensive of a palette of uses for this particular neighborhood. We do have industrial operations on the north side of Highway 20, and we have an industrial operation immediately east that's in the northernmost quadrant of, I think, what is Phase 2 of Cedar Beach Cove. That has been operating for a number of years.
That's the one the lady said was the eyesore?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And eliminating the industrial district on this side of the road, I think would be an improvement in the neighborhood. With regard to the RV length of stay, presently in the state of Florida, state law allows you to stay in an RV park for up to 12 months before you have to unhook and at least drive around the block. In Walton County, we did not update our code to 12 months when that state law changed from 6 to 12 months. Still 6 months in Walton County. You cannot live in an RV park on a permanent basis.
Okay.
Without unhooking every 6 months and at least driving around the block and coming back in as a new tenant.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Any more questions? I mean,
No, that's it. Thank you.
Mr. Cosin?
You know, we need more RV parks, but I believe the citizens, and this is, I've got no evidence to prove this. I got the impression from the citizen comments that they haven't been, that the developers possibly have not been 100% upfront with them and forthcoming.
Well, we can ask them about that.
Okay. There's some citizens that live around adjoining properties that said that they were never polled, they were never questioned, they were never asked. And I don't disbelieve them. I think they're telling the truth. And I don't know what y'all did, but yes, sir. Please.
There's two separate areas in there. There's a Cedar Beach and then there's a Trails End. So
Cedar Beach neighborhood goes in. The owner that I met with this place, all of these people, this lady was there, some of the road. So my property,
Okay.
So the lady on the end of the cul-de-sac?
her name's
Trails End Drive. Trails End Drive, yeah.
Sir, are you a resident of Walton County? And you, sir?
I live in Walton.
Okay. Y'all have answered my question. I'd like to make a comment before we vote.
Sure.
We're not going to all have unanimous votes all the time. So when we're when we're struggling like this, like I am right now, on which way to go, I'm going to go with the Walton County citizens. So if I don't vote the way the majority of the panel does, please don't take it personal.
Are you, well, you know there's another phase of this.
Yes, sir. And we're going to talk about it, the next phase later on item number 14.
Right, this only changes the land use.
Which I
This
think works
doesn't deal-
favorably to the landowners.
Yeah, I think so
except-
too.
Okay, so explain this. This isn't saying that the RV park is approved.
No.
It's not.
They're
That
just-
comes up next. We'll take that up in just a minute.
For the industrial use.
You'll get another chance at that one in a minute.
Okay.
This one changes the land use, which, as Max said, the land use right now is pretty intense.
They could put a landfill there. That got my attention. So all we're doing is changing it from heavy industrial to,
State residential, or was that what it was?
Rural village.
Rural
village,
residential
I'm sorry.
and rural village.
thank you for that clarification.
I do think it helps them here to change it, because as Max said, somebody comes in, if they decide not to do this, because we turn it down, and somebody comes in and wants to put an industrial operation there,
They can't turn it down.
yeah, I mean, once it, you know, if.
They could
if
put a
meet-
concrete plant there.
They could do whatever qualifies for industrial, which, yeah.
Okay, okay.
So anyway, did that answer your question?
Yes, sir. It cleared it up. Thank you.
All right, anybody else got any questions, any discussion? Okay, well, what are your wishes?
Make recommendation to remove forward.
Okay, we have a motion to approve.
Second.
Second. Any other discussion, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carried. Oh, yeah, if y'all don't mind, can we take a 10-minute break? we'll come back at 6:30. A little longer than 10 minutes, but.
Sorry, I didn't see you going by.
Hey Cindy, do you defend the county on that Nelly Town?
Yeah. On things where we have insurance coverage.
Flip it to the carrier?
I saw one
But
42
on
mile an
that,
hour
we
flight.
wouldn't have insurance.
That had enough big enough balls. Right.
No, so,
I kept going fast, I kept shrinking. Yeah, people call me crazy, but.
Okay, sorry, we'll get
I'm
started.
sorry, I'm
We'll get
sorry.
started.
I do. Yeah, see what I can do.
I think we're in the quasi judicial section now. Do we need to swear everybody in? Okay, y'all ready? I'm gonna call to order.
Makes a mess.
anyone who anticipates speaking or testifying on any of the remaining items, if you would, stand at this time to be sworn in. So if you plan on speaking on any of the remaining items, okay, so raise your hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide to this board will be the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Whenever you come forward, make sure you state your full name and state whether or not you've been sworn in.
Okay, Matt.
Mr. Chairman, I think we have 3 quasi-judicial items remaining on our agenda tonight.
Okay.
The first one being the Twin Palms subdivision. This is a major development that's been reviewed by Tim Brown, and standing in for Tim Brown tonight will be Stephen Shawn.
Okay.
Good evening, Stephen Schoen, Planning and Development Services. I've been sworn. This is a major development order application submitted by Anderson Engineering Incorporated on behalf of Southgate Holdings LLC, requesting approval to develop a 25-lot, single-family residential subdivision with pool amenity and associated infrastructure on 5.08 plus or minus acres with a future land use of residential and a zoning category of neighborhood infill. The property is identified by the parcel number in your staff report, which I would like entered into the record if I could, please.
Okay.
Thank you. The staff report appears to indicate that all outstanding comments have been satisfied, and I would be happy to turn it over to the applicant if you don't have any questions for staff.
You got any questions? All right.
Oh, I did see what appeared to be maybe just a mistake. The school district, when they responded, talked about 27 homes. This says 25 here. Do you know whether that was just a mistake on the school board's part, or?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know. I was trying to find out.
Right, well, it's not your.
Yeah, sorry, sorry.
Thank you, sir.
Is that it? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Stephen. My name is Brian Osborne with Anderson Engineering. I have been sworn in. It is a 25-lot subdivision on 5 acres. It was 27. It was 27 lots, but we reduced a couple lots in order to get the pool and amenities area in. It's an inlet beach. It's north of 98. There's a commercial development just to the south of us, and then there's a similar subdivision just to the east of us. Access will be off of North Wall, and I guess more specifically, Walton Palm Drive will be extended we're extending that per the public works requirement all along the south of our property. For it to be an east-west corridor connection there once it's all complete. We don't have any wetlands. We're providing the required conservation area, and this conservation area and our detention area that buffers the commercial to our south pretty nicely. So we're not maximizing our density. I think it'll be a nice little subdivision.
Any questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you, sir. All right, we got any public comments on this one? Don't see any in the audience. We got any on Zoom? Okay, we'll close public comments. Commissioners, got any questions, comments? There's a lot of buyout money has to be put up, recreational fee, preservation buyout, sidewalk, and proportionate fair share, but I guess y'all are gonna pay it, huh? Okay. All right, commissioners, what are your wishes?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. The next item on our agenda is the Topsail West PUD Phase 3 Amendment. This is a major development application to amend the Topsail West PUD. It was reviewed by Tim Brown, and I think Bob Baronti is standing in for Tim on this project.
All right, Bob. All right, Bob.
Stephen
no.
Shawn also.
All right.
Stephen Schoen, I've been sworn. This is a major development order application submitted by McNeil Carroll Engineering Incorporated, requesting approval to change the use in Phase 3 of the planned unit development from shopping center to hotel and change the parking rate from shopping center to hotel on 11.07 acres with a future land use of mixed use and a zoning category of coastal mixed center. If I could have the staff report entered into the record, please.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I would also like the public comment that I'm pretty sure you all received to be entered along with that.
Okay.
Again, the staff report indicates that there are no outstanding comments, and I'd be happy to turn it over to the applicant if you don't have questions of me.
I'm sorry, say that again. I was reading the letter you just
I'm
mentioned.
sorry. If you don't have questions for me, I'll turn it over to the applicant.
Okay, thank you. Stay close in case we do.
Yes, sir.
Hey, good evening. I'm Sean McNeil, and I am filling in for Robert Carroll. So I am McNeil Carroll Engineering, Panama City. It's very straightforward. We're asking for a change from retail to the hotel. It's a smaller footprint. It has less parking, as you can see on the approved or on the proposed plans.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant? What was the reason for the change?
They've gone from retail to a hotel. So
Hotel's not as needed? I'm just curious.
I really don't know that answer, besides probably they have a potential purchaser of the property.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, by the way.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you for your
Thank
service.
you. Okay, anyone in the public want to comment on this? See, you know where Walmart is? Walmart?
Yes. Center of
98? It's right there at the corner. I think they just built that little breakfast place on the corner? First Watch?
Didn't we hear this last month?
No, I think we,
No, sir. This location is directly east of the South Walton Walmart, and we affectionately refer to as Small Mart.
yes. Right on the corner.
It's due to its small footprint.
I don't hear any citizen objection.
We had the one letter.
One letter, yeah.
You have that.
Okay, any other comments, board, questions? Okay, well, what are your wishes?
Move to approve.
You have a motion?
I'll second it.
You have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None, so motion carries. Okay, the South Walton RV Park was continued, so that brings us to Trout Creek RV Park again.
Yes, sir. The Trout Creek RV Park has been reviewed by Bob Baronti, and we can continue the discussion of that now.
Yes, sir. All right, Bob.
Bob Baronti, Baronti, and I have been sworn. As you said, Max said, this is the continuation. This is the development order. It would be a major development order for the Trout Creek RV Village. It's a major development application submitted by Innerlight Engineering on behalf of Trout Creek Village LLC, requesting to develop an RV site for rental purposes with a future land use of industrial and extractive uses and in rural residential and a zoning district of heavy industrial and rural village. Obviously, some of that has just changed. It is parcel numbers in your staff report, and this really doesn't apply anymore, but this is subject of the approval of the future land use change. All comments have been addressed. This meets the Land Development Code and Comprehensive Plan. The applicant is here, David Smith, to answer any questions. Do you have any questions of me before I turn it over to Mr. Smith?
Just questions for staff? No?
Will you enter the staff report in the record, please?
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will turn it over to David Smith for more detailed.
All right, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Bob. And for the record, I'm David Smith with Innerlight Engineering, SMITH, and I have been sworn in. I know a lot of the development order items we discussed during the land use amendment, so I'll do just a brief overview. This is a 45-pad RV park, and as I presented earlier, the large area here to the west is wetlands. there's a common dock, and then the RVs are situated to the northeast portion of the property. So there's 45 pads, there's 3 cabins over here, swimming pool here, and an office building for check-in. So the flow of traffic, as the traffic comes around, this is all one way, and then they exit out. So the pads are set up where you can drive in, pull up, and drive out of the sub-street.
Oh, I got you.
To be able to leave. So your access flows around, up, and out. So it's designed, everything comes in this side and goes out to the east side.
You don't have to rely on somebody's driving skills to get them in there then.
No, so it's designed for one-way traffic. So
Gotcha.
we are coordinating with the Department of Transportation for our driveway connection permits to SR 20. And I know there were questions that were raised during.
I got a question real quick. Do any of the RV pads back up to lots or houses anywhere? Existing lots and houses?
This is an existing lot here. So that's the closest RV pad here to a lot. This is the industrial use.
Yes.
This lot is vacant. You can see the lots along here are vacant.
You said you had talked to that lady anyway.
Yes, Ms. Woods owns all of this area and this portion of property as well as the industrial property.
All 4 of those lots or 5 of those lots in there too?
Does, yes.
Okay.
And then Mr. Howell met with Ms. Woods as well. And so the closest RV pad sits about right here to this lot. Then the remainder of the pads back up to the industrial.
So they don't back up to anybody in there that's existing or has opposition to
That's
what we've
correct.
heard so far? Okay, I'm just curious, just want to make sure.
I don't think all of the people here, but several of the people live over in this phase of Cedar Beach, but not all. I know they live in different areas, but we did meet with Ms. Wood, though, which is the property owner here, and she was in support.
Where did you say your pool was gonna be now? Your
It's-
clubhouse and pool?
Going to be in this location.
So it's not adjacent to any of those lots or people's houses?
It's not even close. The closest lot, which was owned by Ms. Wood, is here, and then the pool is here.
But is there gonna be a buffer between over here? Any buffer?
From the pool?
No,
Over
over
here?
here on your property.
Oh, here's the buffer area.
We have a 25-foot landscape buffer.
So you can have a landscape buffer?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The 25-foot is to buffer us from the industrial use, and then we also have a landscape buffer down along the cabins that run along the vacant lots that Ms. Wood owns as well.
So they shouldn't hear much noise or see it?
As far as phase 1 of Cedarwood, it's it's over Ms. Wood's property, and no one coming to this RV site will be going down the Cedar Beach Road.
Okay, my question, I don't know what they do in the evenings after get out of dark. It's gonna be in the pool, I think it's source of noise. Far enough away and you got enough buffer, you should minimize that.
That's our position as well, is the pool is located very far away, and it's over here closer to the Trout Creek boardwalk.
Okay, that was my
Yes, sir.
question. I mean, you answered me fine.
Yes.
Okay.
And I know a couple of the questions raised, I'll go ahead and address, is
Okay.
we have to do an environmental assessment that includes an archaeological study as well as wildlife study. And Biome Consulting, Glenn Miley, performed that study, and there was no archaeological concern for this property. Septic systems, we have designed the systems in accordance with the health department requirements. We do have approval from the health department, so they have reviewed this. We actually did have a Zoom meeting with them as well. So it has been designed in accordance with health department requirements and has been approved. And again, as we commented during the future land use amendment and rezoning, is if sewer is ever available along SR 20, we do agree for the record to connect to that sewer as well in the future if that happens. And I already pointed out, but I'll point it out again, is I know the concern with the proximity to the RV is there's an existing industrial use here closer over to the residential that operates today. So the majority of our RVs that even get close to this area back up to that industrial use. So I know I'm making this point again, but we are not, there's no RV that's in close proximity to this first phase of Cedar Beach. That's a general overview. I'd respectfully request if I can speak at the end as well.
Sure, you can answer any questions that come up.
And I'll make this other comment for the record, then I'll sit down, is we did start conversations with the residents, and assume whatever the board votes, we are going to reach out just to have conversations with them and maybe have a Zoom meeting or call and see if we can answer questions or work together. So we would commit to doing that, whatever the vote is this evening by this board.
Okay.
I would make that for the record.
All right, thank you, sir. Any questions for the applicant? Wait, hold up, David. I think we got.
David, I got a quick question.
Yes.
In regards to health department approval, did they look at the results of geotechnical?
They did. Yes, sir.
And everything's going per ponds, sewer's good. I mean, septics.
And that was part of the design, is we do have geotechnical soil borings with permeability rates for the drain fields. So all that was reviewed.
Okay.
I know one question that came up was about the drainage going into the wetland area. I'm sure y'all are probably, your engineering has done your stormwater systems and everything to keep everything on site for, what, the 100-year?
We do, if there's a positive conveyance, it's a 25-year an open basin, if you will, that flows to the creek, to the bay. But we do treat our water before we release it to the wetland area. So we do meet the Walton County Land Development Code requirements for stormwater management and treatment and attenuation for the site prior to releasing it to the wetland area.
That at the bottom, that where that is over? That's okay. That's what I thought. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. No other questions for the applicant? All right. Oh yeah, we're about to open up public comments right now. Yes, sir.
I'm Scott Jackson, Jackson. I'm a resident of a adjoining property to this proposed RV site. I'm also a new RV owner, so I can respect the fact that they want to use that property for such. I do not think it's the right thing to do, in my opinion, to sandwich an RV park between these two subdivisions. People have dedicated their lives to move in that particular area for the peace and tranquility that area affords. There have been a lot of concerns about the environmental issues here, Trout Creek in particular. I attended the technical review committee and asked at that time what the intentions were with Trout Creek. It was to build a boardwalk and have a small deck area for the occupants of the RV park to enjoy. Meanwhile, while that was occurring, the owner of the RV site was having the creek cleared. I don't know if that's right or wrong. And when I say cleared, I mean bringing a small barge in and clearing some of the vegetation and plants and whatnot, all the way from his property down to Chattahoochee Bay. Heard a lot of talk about wetlands when we first opened this meeting, about the protection of wetlands and the importance of them. I believe what has occurred is an egregious disregard for the rules. That's happening before the project's approved. I'm concerned about what the future of this project might look like. Right now, as I understand, somebody can stay there a minimum or maximum of 6 months, drive around the block, stay another 6 months. Is this going to become a upscale RV park? That's the intention. I don't see anything written or any rules. Of course, rules don't really matter from what I can tell. So I'm speaking on behalf of a number of citizens in our neighborhood, only to find out that there are the citizens of the adjoining neighborhood on the other side that feel the same way. This property also has the adjoining property that, if purchased in the future, could bring it down to the bay. And then all of a sudden, we've got kayakers, jet skis, motorboats, all the things that would impede on the happiness of the residents that are currently there. So I ask for your consideration in looking at this. Is the RV park a good idea? Perhaps. Is this the best place for it? The residents don't think so. I know the owner and the engineering firm are reaching out to us to want to speak. I think we're glad to speak with them. Are they going to change their minds? I don't know. I think there's some fundamental things there that we won't get past. So with that in mind, I just want to ask one question. Who is in charge of the environmental aspects of this project? DEP, EPA, Corps of Engineers.
It's all of the above.
All the above. So who would I need to contact to take a look into this? I've called environmental with the county. I've called code enforcement. I've sent a email last night to one of the planning supervisors. No response.
Get up with the DEP and the others you mentioned, DEP and the Corps and everything. I'm sure they'll.
If things are right, that's great. If they're not, they need to be looked at. Thank you.
Sir. All right, anybody else to speak? Yes, sir.
Maple, M-A-P-L-E, Cedar Beach Cove. You've heard all of our neighbors speak. You've heard my neighbors speak on the Zoom as well. Like my previous person that came up here, the RV park, I have an RV as well. Several of us have RVs. Is it the right place to put one? I don't think so either. We have residential there. Now, if they change their plan to go residential, we're all in on that. But to have an RV park there is just the wrong thing to have in our neighborhood, period. We've talked about Trout Creek, we've talked about environmentals, we've talked about everything that this board understands and appreciates. All we're asking you to do is appreciate what we're saying as citizens here in the county. I've been there for 21 years. I built my house 21 years ago. I think if you'll drive through our neighborhood, you'll see that every one of our houses are better than the average house. I would like for you to just take this into consideration. You want it in your neighborhood. That's all I'm asking. Thank you for telling.
Mac, I got a question real quick. What is the, with the new zoning land use change, what is the density on this piece of property now? What was it, rural village? So you got how many acres there? 10?
Approximately, if it's a 10-acre parcel, 20 acres or 20 units per acre, subject to clustering from the wetlands.
Well, they're already in the pipeline, so
Today,
they
that's
wouldn't,
the gross
they
density.
wouldn't have to
That
worry
would be
about
the
that.
gross density for rural village on this site.
So 20,
Yes, sir.
okay. Because I really don't see that the residential aspect being a good one right there on 20 because of, you know, the highway. I mean, I was asking, I didn't know how much you put on there because I don't know if somebody put apartments or something out there, but anyway, just a question. Anybody else got any other question? Oh, wait, we were in public comments, weren't we? I'm sorry, anybody else in the public want to comment? Yeah.
Cross Maple, Cedar Beach Cove. Again, we're talking about 10 acres of property. The 4.34 acres of it is wetland. So we keep talking about 10 acres, unless they're going to mitigate the 4.34 acres, you're talking about 7 acres. So just.
It doesn't matter for the density's sake.
Okay.
It's still going to be 20 units out there, what they could build for residential. That's why I was just trying to figure out what the residential density was.
Even if it's 7 acres? I mean.
They can put 20 lots on 7 acres, is what I'm saying. They've got 20 units they can put out there.
All right, sir. Thank you for
Doesn't matter about the size at that point, so. Yes,
Appreciate
sir.
the clarification.
Any other questions or any other comments? Yes, sir.
Meyer, I took the oath, live on Bayshore Drive as well, and I just want to, I think a lot of what was already said, I wanted to say too, noise abatement and so forth and so on, but we did, I think that I would personally agree to houses and not RVs there, so I would be willing to listen to that if that was a consideration. But,
Yeah, that's what we were talking about, though. We just don't know how economical it is to do houses out there because those kind of lots right there on Highway 20, I don't know how well they would sell. That's the reason I was asking.
Well, as we mentioned before, RVs would just degrade our values, you know, in the local area. So if there was an alternative to RV parks, I'd be more than willing to listen to that.
Okay. Anyone else? Oh, we have a Zoom, okay.
One more.
Hold up just a second, we'll take Kim while he's.
Hello, thank you for allowing me to speak again. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Okay. My wife is here now. We've been discussing it. I think I made my points in the earlier discussion about the change of use. And there was an implicit threat thrown out that, well, they could use it for a landfill. First of all, that would be a very expensive way to run a landfill, but I guess if you really wanted one there with the previous zoning, I suppose it could be done, but it really wouldn't make much sense. So now we're into a new thing about, 45 RV sites and 3 little houses on the same acreage. And that density is just, I'm sorry, but it's absurd, okay? And it's like a gentleman made a wonderful point earlier, that, sandwiched between 2 residential neighborhoods, an RV park is just not, it's not consistent, okay? I have some property in North County and North Walton County, and I have a little tree orchard there that I work. And King Lake, and there's a Good Sam Park out there and some other things, where people go and want to go enjoy themselves. And they, from time to time, bring in, live music, and it carries. And, I'm not a fan of some of their musical choices, frankly. And, I don't feel like that, having that much, that many people imposing their, lifestyle on our quiet neighborhood is a good idea. Now, I understand Ms. Woods has done some things with her properties that are controversial within our own neighborhood. I'm pretty much, I like to stay on good terms with everybody, but this business about putting in 45 plus RV sites so close to our residential neighborhood and the one adjoining, let me say, I'm a little skeptical that there was a real groundswell of support for this in the adjoining neighborhoods. Like I said, I never spoke with anyone, and nobody to my knowledge within my neighborhood has spoken to any of this. We've addressed the habitat encroachment. We've addressed traffic concerns, and believe me, that is a legitimate concern. Even with a driveway into the place, I don't know how many of you gentlemen and lady are aware of the traffic on Highway 20, but it's kind of like a stock car race at times, and then people are texting, and I foresee real danger there. And I guess there's impacts to the environment with respect to the wetlands, but there's also impacts to the life of the residents out there who preceded this, and I guarantee you, there's no support for it. If the developer has somebody that, other than Carol Wood, that supports this particular development, we need to talk to them. Because I'd like to persuade them that, they're really making a bad decision. And I think everyone who's spoken tonight, does not want it, okay? And they're the ones that are going to be impacted by it. And the gentleman asked a very good question. Would you, as commissioners, want this RV park next to your neighborhood? And there are other places within the county they can put RV parks, and they'll be much less intrusive to longstanding residents of the county. Thank you for allowing me to share that.
Yes, sir. Anybody else want to speak on this? Yes, ma'am.
Hello, I'm Jillian Sutherland, Southerland, and yes, I've been sworn in. So I am also a resident of Cedar Beach Cove, and while everybody has pretty much addressed all the topics that I was going to say, I'm going to ask some other questions. With a campground RV park, there's going to be campfires. And in this area, when the wind picks up and those ashes start blowing around, especially to the neighboring properties to the east, that's industrial, which I know for a fact is very dry and not maintained at all. What's going to happen when that causes a wildfire and then that fire possibly threatens all of our homes, especially mine that backs up to the other industrial park? Also, you've got a lot of venomous snakes, a lot of wildlife in that area. And if you're bringing children and animals and pets and a lot of density of people, then what's going to happen when those conflicts occur? You're going to have venomous snake bites, possibly bears getting into trash, things like that. Also, with a property such as this with density and people enjoying the creek for recreational uses, you're going to have pollution. So people aren't going to pick up their trash. So you've got a lot of things to consider when it comes to putting in this type of development between two subdivisions. In fact, there's another subdivision just north on Rogers Road. There's some houses there. So also the traffic. I have witnessed myself personally trying to turn onto Cedar Beach Cove, going west, and I have literally watched 3 cars hit each other behind me while I'm waiting on cars to pass this way to turn onto my road. And it's very unfortunate that that happens, but the traffic is just increasing continuously. And my last note that I'd like to bring up is I like wildlife. I like birding. I'm a naturalist at heart. And so with that in mind, I like to walk my road and go birding. I like to walk through Trails End and go birding. What's to say that the owner of Trails End doesn't sell her 2 adjacent lots or 1 to the developer here, and then they put in a second access road? And now we've got RVs possibly going down our road. How do you keep that from happening? I'm just a homeowner, and I'm just trying to stand up for, my property rights and concerns. So these are some questions that I need answered. Thank you.
Well, as far as the onto the other road, that would come up in another development order process, because they'd have to get one to, first off, they'd have to do another land use change for the adjacent property. So that's not a question in this one that we can answer. So,
Chairman Perry, I have a question really for David, but it may be answered by someone.
let me make sure we don't
public.
have any other,
Okay, sure.
any public comments. Is that all? No Zooms? Anybody else in here? Okay, then we'll close public comment. Yes, sir.
Okay, David, and this.
Wait.
All right, who is it? Oh, we have 2 more, huh? All right, well, let's let them, and then we're shutting it down. Go ahead. Hello? Mr. and Mrs. Paget, are you there? Okay. We'll close public comments then. Yes, sir.
All right, David, on the plans, on the southeast corner of the site, there's a gravel road that terminates with a T-turnaround with the 3 cabins. And just south of that, at least according to the Walton County Property Appraiser's website, looks to be a connector of Bayshore Drive. So my question is, who owns and maintains Bayshore Drive, and is that road currently drivable? And is the intent, my last question, is the intent for that gravel drive to connect to Bayshore Drive and run down to the bay?
I am not sure of the ownership, but the intent is not to connect to that by us. So where our T turnaround ends, we have a landscape buffer proposed, and we have no intention, once obviously our development order is approved with the landscape buffer, we can't come in and clear the landscape buffer, so we have no intention to connect the road to the south. And I'm not sure about the ownership of that roadway.
You're talking about Cedar Beach, aren't you?
No, it's Bayshore Drive.
It's a little sliver.
Yeah.
I'll show you. It's
yeah, there David has
sliver there.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
The concern was traffic and potential RVs are making the loop if that's ever developed, cleared out, maintained. And
Again, we clearly have a landscape buffer shown. It is not our intent to connect to that road.
Wetlands through there.
That's correct.
Okay.
You got anything else? Yes, sir.
I have a question for our lawyer, Ms. Whitney. Based on citizen objection, this was voted down. They put a lot of time, energy, effort, and money into this project. Can you defend that?
That's quite a question.
I mean, this is reality.
Yeah.
I don't want to cost the county a lot of money, and I want to help the citizens. So can you defend citizens?
Well, so my job is to represent the Board of County Commissioners. So I represent them and I defend the actions that they take. I think in this is a difficult situation, and it's got two prongs to it, a legislative prong and quasi-judicial. So it's kind of complicated. I mean, with the legislative item, the zoning change, or the small-scale amendment, I guess it is, and the zoning change, you have a lot more discretion about granting those. But it seems like everyone agrees that the industrial use is not appropriate for that area. However, if it is changed to, what is it, rural village or
Village.
an RV is a entitlement for that land use category. So that's kind of the conundrum that everyone is in. They're entitled to put an RV there under the current code regulations if they get the land use change.
On
If
the
they
other
don't
side
get the
of
land
that,
use change, though, it's industrial, and they
Yeah,
can
if
put
they
something
decide-
much more intense.
If they don't get an affirmative vote here on this, they may decide not to take the land use change forward and do something industrial out there. They got that
That's the
option.
difficult
And this would be
situation.
back to where we are now, where the citizens wouldn't want. They're trying to protect.
Right, but right now, if it's zoned industrial, they are entitled under the code to put those uses in.
And I would think, more than likely, with Ms. Woods being the neighbor there, that she might be more inclined to do something in a residential sense if there's residential next to it, but she's still got industrial too, so that would have to be addressed, or she just will continue or do something else industrial on it, keep it like it is. Apparently it's an eyesore. So,
Look, it looks from the zoning map, there's actually quite a bit in there that was zoned industrial.
yeah, it doesn't look like a great area for industrial, but it's got
But it-
zoned that way somehow in the past. We didn't do it, so, I don't know.
Citizens that's been living there for a couple of decades are getting this plan down. It isn't sitting, I don't think there's a legal leg to stand on it.
It wouldn't really be appropriate for me to comment on what would happen ultimately in a litigation or appeals or anything like that. I think other than just what I've said about the situation with the land use change, and I do understand the difficult position you guys are all in, but
Let me ask you this, being that it's a land use change that we've just voted on, if we voted against this, I mean, then the commissioners take it up, they know the vote, so then they could take it up based on the votes that have already been made, so that, if that helps. It doesn't put us in a situation where we could be sued at that point, because they could straighten it out at their end.
that's true, yeah.
Not trying to throw them under the bus, but you know what I'm saying? Because this is a situation where one situation seems better for them, the other situation doesn't seem quite as well, although.
And I see where y'all are coming from, and I'm very pro RV, but I'm also pro Walton County.
And respectfully, from our perspective, is we're here to downzone and to change from heavy industrial, and then we go into the Walton County Land Development Code and look at the allowable uses for rural village and come up with a plan and go through the process, and here we are. So we've looked at your code, we follow all the rules and the regulations, and very respectfully, that's how we got here.
Yeah.
I've been involved in projects around Walton, and nobody can say good job and been a good steward with him. We're downzoning it from something that chemical plant type thing to an RV park, and I have no idea. Did meet with the adjoining neighbor, Miss Wood. Supports it, she doesn't object it. The property is a little bit further away, it's on the other side. So I didn't go that far over to meet with those guys, but I'm a good neighbor, and if I had known that.
Do you have buffers along 20? So how visible is it going to be in that area? Because right now, it doesn't back up to anybody's house, so they're not going to be able to see from a residential side, not. So how much buffer do you have on 20?
We here have a preservation buffer. Long it's 10 feet here, and then it widens out in this location and in this location.
So if you not increase your buffer, but increased what you did in the buffer as far as vegetation so that it pretty much made it as invisible as it can be with a 10-foot buffer, I mean, then you're not seeing it from 20. I know it doesn't help the traffic as far as what they're saying, but it could help from the visibility standpoint, because no houses are going to see it from there. Anyway, I'm sorry, go ahead. Okay, all right.
If this passes, could you make sure what he just said?
You can make the recommendation if that's what.
Right, we could make that a condition, or a recommendation as part of the motion.
I got a question. Who will be managing? Will you be doing it? My career, I've been a project manager for other. Well, my biggest concern is, these people have a right to the quiet, peaceful enjoyment of their homes. That swimming pool, I live in Seagrove. People bring electronics that you can hear from my house a mile away to Seaside. That don't need to happen. I'm not opposed to taking the pool. These RVers, these RV parks, and you're an RVer. I mean, I don't stay in RV parks. Responsible people, they're not for the most part I haven't been in the RV business. Well, I mean, I don't know if you're gonna have vacationers there or what you're gonna, I mean, I don't know, but I'm just saying, they don't need to be listening to,
What's the average age of an RVer? I don't think you're going to be looking at spring breakers out there, but I may be wrong.
Right. That's my question. These folks don't need to be, sitting at 10 o'clock at night with the music still running.
Mr. Coulson, do you crank your music up when you're playing?
Regulations in place. I'm willing to have that in the development order.
Part of the problem?
I mean, you got buffer, they can't see it, they're far enough away, but the noise don't respect those buffers. I'll tell you that right now. Y'all, if to be good neighbors, you got to do that.
I understand what you're saying, but there's also a good bit of vegetation between these things too. I mean, it looks like to me already from natural vegetation. So, but I'm not discounting. I just think that there's a lot of should be some noise breaks in there already.
Believe me, electronics defeats everything.
Well, if it's open, yeah.
No.
No, I know what you're saying. If they've got it magnified, sure, but.
I mean, I've had people next to me in
ma'am,
Seagrove,
public
you can
comments
hear
are
them a
closed,
mile
sorry.
away, through a thicket of trees. I mean, but electronics will overpower the whole deal. I mean, if they just out there laughing and playing, that's something else.
The reason.
But they don't need to be sitting there, like I say, late at night, and they listen to Fox News and they can understand it because, and that's, I mean, and if you can, you can make sure that will not happen. That in the development order, we can write something in there, whatever we can do to do that. I mean, because this is a compatibility
I'm assuming it would be a
issue.
condition of his development
Right,
order.
I think y'all meet all the codes, but they're trying to say it's not compatible. But if it's gonna make, if you can make sure they're gonna have some peace and quiet, I don't have any assurance that they're not gonna play that loud music at their house and bother my 70-year-old RVers as well.
Yeah,
I'm, you know, it's the
exactly.
same thing, but I'm willing to back it up on my end, I really am.
Well, you're go, that's a good fight, you know, step fight.
So who's managing it?
Well, that's what I was headed to. This is kind of my thing, myself and a partner, and we're gonna manage it. It's kind of my retirement thing, is really what it is. It's getting closer to retirement age, and I like that RV lifestyle, and so we will probably have an on-site person there all the time that'll live there, but then I'll be hands-on managing.
If you go from one extreme to the other, you can have a RV camp turn into trailer track. Or you can have a nice, respectful family RV where you don't have to worry about music, and you got rules to go by.
This isn't a trailer trash RV park. There's no retirement income for me in a trailer trash RV park.
And unfortunately, that's not an uncommon theme, and that's, you know, what the residents think, but that's just worth it.
I can appreciate that. I really can.
To clarify, so if they were to put a fence in there, would that be okay, so close to Highway 20? Okay, I just want to make sure, in case that was a condition.
Okay, any other questions, commissioners?
What's the industrial parcel next to it? What plant is operating out there?
Warehouse, it used to be a manufacturing facility for like big heavy molds. Something to do with glass now, like hurricane. Exactly what it is.
They actually manufacturing there or
I
something?
don't think so, Mr. Perry. I think it's more, they may do that, but I'm not sure. It used to be,
Assembling or storage or something?
probably, where it used to be manufacturing.
Okay.
I think it's just, they operate out of it like a warehouse type thing right now.
All right. Okay, we got any other questions?
I don't know. They're saying it's not operational. I heard that there are people that lease it that operate glass.
Okay. All right. Commissioners, y'all got any other questions? Discussion?
Yeah, I was a little confused on, was there talk of removing the pool or just limiting the noise devices? Because
There was talk. I don't think anything was ever really, I don't think
Just
anything
the
came.
noise is what.
Okay, all right, yeah, because I mean.
But it seems to me an amenity like.
It needs amenities if he's gonna keep the rents
I think you'd
up.
reduce the
Yeah.
potential for higher
Correct, yeah.
paying renters if you don't have anything there for them.
Yeah.
Oh, amenities, just don't abuse it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And my full attention to that pool probably it's not like music noise, excuse me, not people that drink. I'm willing to have that daytime pool with.
Well, you got some RVs kind of close to the pool, so if anybody's staying there, they're not gonna like it too much.
You're gonna have some Department of Health rules regarding the pooling anyway, so.
Sir, all right, no other questions for, all right, discussion. Mr. Cosin, your head's spinning.
So I have a question for staff, just so I'm clear. Granted, the land use change is what's being proposed. There aren't any outstanding variances or anything. It's in compliance with the code.
We have no code violations. I don't think they're asking for any variances for the RV park. It's a standard RV park that meets the requirements of the Land Development Code, as they're stated.
That's it. I move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. We have a second. Any other questions, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Unopposed. All right, motion carries. Mac, we got anything else?
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Kathy?
I feel for them, but I don't.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
tough.
a little late. I like to get there
Get
around
back up to
6.
some houses, I'd be more concerned, but there is
Yes,
some
Ed.
distance
I was
between them. Yeah.
See ya.
Oh, yes, good night.
Yes, ma'am.
Bye, guys.
You have a good one.
You too.
Oh, yeah, let's motion to adjourn, I'm sorry. Otherwise, we'll have to
I make
leave
a
our mics
motion,
on
we
all night.
adjourn.
Motion, thank you.
I got to roll. I'll see ya.